Chapter 3264. The hall was silent and filled with a murderous aura. Lin Sun glanced at the crowd and asked, "Why are you the only ones left?" Tushan Lung kept silent for a moment and said, "Those fellows left because they were afraid of you. They have already admitted defeat. If you see them in the future, I hope you can show mercy to them." Then he smiled bitterly. "Of course, I know I'm not qualified to ask you to do that. But in my opinion, those who left won't dare to be enemies with me in this life." Lin Sun asked thoughtfully, "What about you? Why didn't you leave?" Tushan Lung didn't hesitate this time. He responded honestly, "We are following orders. We will guard the dark world." "I see." Lin Sun nodded and suddenly said, "If Absolute Beginning Ruler is in trouble one day, what will you do?" Tushan Lung and the others were all stunned. Would their hierarch be defeated? They had never thought about this problem because the power of Absolute Beginning Ruler had long been deeply rooted in their hearts. No one had ever thought that he would be in trouble. Think about this problem carefully. With that, Lin Sun turned around and left. Xia Ji followed him closely. Tushan Lung and the others couldn't believe that Lin Sun just left like that. He let us go. Only after a long time had passed did someone ask. The space between their brows carried doubt and disbelief. Maybe in his eyes, we old guys are no different from small fish and shrimps. Maybe only people above the level of boundless Tao can be taken seriously by him, someone said bitterly. According to what he said just now, is he going to deal with our hierarch one day? Someone's face changed. No matter what, we managed to survive this time. It's a blessing, isn't it? Someone murmured. At this time, Tushan Lung, who had been silent for a long time, suddenly bowed and cupped his hands towards the gate of the palace. Although he didn't say anything, everyone knew that he was thanking Lin Sun for not killing them. "Why didn't you kill them?" In the void, Xia Ji was a little confused. In the past, Lin Sun was decisive and would never be so merciful. When the tree falls, the monkeys scatter. Their tree is the absolute beginning sovereign. Only by defeating him can they solve their problem once and for all. Otherwise, no matter how many people they kill, as long as the absolute beginning sovereign is alive, he will be able to raise an endless stream of new subordinates. Of course, more importantly, if I don't kill them, they'll definitely spread the news to the other 9 tribes of Taichu. If that's the case, anyone who tries to attack us in the future will have to think twice about the consequences. Just like how you didn't kill that middle-aged man back in the capital of the Qing Kingdom in the Mortal Transformation realm? Yes, if we let them live, we can disintegrate their internal fighting spirit and cause their camp to become lax. If they die, there will be no one to help me pass the message to the other enemies. Lin Sun said, "Of course, the most important thing is to get rid of the Taichu Dominator. As the saying goes, to catch all the followers, one must catch the ringleader first. If the ringleader is not eliminated, the disaster will always exist." "But can you defeat him now?" Xia Ji asked. Lin Sun shook his head and said softly, "Not yet. However, I have plenty of opportunities to improve myself while he doesn't. This is my advantage." "What do you mean?" Xia Ji didn't understand. She understood. Lin Sun explained patiently. The absolute beginning sovereign arrived at the ruins of Myriad Dao a very long time ago. At that time, he was definitely like us now. He passed through the 9 heavenly gates of the Spirit's divine domain step by step, crossed the severing path, and finally arrived at the profound God domain. Similarly, during this process, the absolute beginning sovereign obtained the quintessence of chaos time and time again, and this allowed his cultivation to attain an unimaginable state. I even suspect that he's taken a step out of the perfection stage of the boundless realm, and he's no longer someone an ordinary boundless sovereign can compare to. However, no matter how strong he is, he's trapped in the profound God domain now. You're aware that there's the profundity divine domain outside the profound God domain, and that place is taken to be the forbidden area of profundity. Since ancient times until now, no one has dared to head there. No matter if it's the absolute beginning sovereign or senior Qinshi, they're all the same. From this, we can determine that the cultivation of supreme figures like the absolute beginning sovereign and Shun, she are bound to be stuck at a bottleneck throughout the countless years of time, and they're unable to advance any further. Otherwise, with their ability, they would have probably gone to explore the profundities of the forbidden area of profundity a long time ago. When she heard up to here, she couldn't help but say, "Didn't they say that the absolute beginning sovereign has always been suppressed by the sword shackles left behind by that swordsman? Who knows if he's really suppressed to the point of being unable to escape, or if it's an intentional facade," said Lin Sun. Regardless of all this, hasn't Senior Qin Shi always stayed in the profound God domain as well? He's definitely already standing at the peak of the boundless realm like the absolute beginning sovereign, or perhaps I should say that he's standing at the end of the boundless realm, and it's even to the extent that he's already taken a step onto the eternal path. But figures like them have always stayed in the profound God domain throughout the countless years of time, and this proves that their cultivation is bound to not be able to break through or improve in the countless years of time. Lin Sun paused for a moment before he continued. On the other hand, I'm different. My cultivation still has sufficient places to improve. The dark world is merely the third heaven realm of the spirit's divine domain, and there's still the fourth to ninth heaven realms and the severing path. I also had the opportunity to improve my cultivation that they were able to obtain in the past. As long as I arrive at the profound God domain alive, then I'll have a chance to stand at the same place as them. As he finished speaking, a wisp of confidence arose between Lin Sun's brows. At that time, there'd be no gap between us. What do I have to fear even if I fight the absolute beginning sovereign? Xia Ji said softly, and me? Lin Sun held her hand and said with a smile, "Yes, and you." There are some things that Lin Sun didn't say. For example, there was still his master, the master of the heart core, Golden Cicada, Chun Linkong, and Chen Shi. They were all waiting for him. The only thing he had to do now was to break through the numerous obstacles and work hard to improve his cultivation. Let's go to the traceback world. As he spoke, Lin Sun issued a command in his mind, and a gate of heaven appeared before him. In the past 3 months, he'd already refined a great deal of the chaos source that belonged to the dark world, and it was equivalent to possessing the power of this world in advance. Thus, he didn't need to borrow the power of the mist spirits to draw out the gate of heaven to leave this world. Immediately, Lin Sun and Xia Ji flashed into it. The fourth heaven in the spirit domain was called the traceback world. It meant to trace back to the source. So long as the cultivators that entered this world sensed the Tao laws of the universe that belonged to this world, then they would enter the river of their past lives. It was like time was flowing in reverse, and the cultivators would feel as if they were situated within their own past, causing numerous scenes of their experiences to appear before their eyes. The most miraculous part was that cultivators could return to their past lives. The cultivators of the world were bound to have no regrets on their path of seeking the Tao, and they were bound to have many things that they were unable to change or take back when they were weak. All of this was helplessness and regret. Even if they possessed the cultivation at the boundless realm now, they were unable to make up for the things of the past. However, they had the chance to step foot into the river of their past lives in the traceback world to make up for it and change it, since the ancient times until now. So long as they had the chance to enter the traceback world, most cultivators would exhaust all means to return to the past in order to change the regrets that had appeared on the path of their lives. This was the miraculous aspect of the traceback world. However, doing this required them to bear an extremely great risk, and it was even to the extent that they had to pay a heavy price, because their past lives were absolutely not an isolated existence. They were like a myriad of threads of karma, and they were related to numerous people in karma. For example, the friends and enemies one made when one was young, or the various incidents one encountered on the path of cultivation were all related to each other. Once one changed a single point in one's life, it would definitely cause all sorts of changes to occur in other people and things. At that time, whether it was fortune or calamity would be completely out of one's control. In the past, There had once been a great figure with an extraordinary cultivation that returned to the past to make up for a regret from their youth. However, after he finished doing all of this, he suddenly perished. The reason was that after he made up for this regret, an unexpected change had occurred in his life after that, and an unexpected calamity had appeared during those changes. It was to the extent that this great figure hadn't even been able to return to reality from his past life before he perished. There were numerous other similar examples. Some seem to have made up for the regrets of the past. Yet after these regrets were made up, the new changes that occurred would affect numerous points in one's life in the future. Once a calamity appeared during these points in one's life, then the cultivator would definitely perish along with it, and it would be impossible for them to return to the past. Of course, there were also many great figures that were calm, possessed great willpower, and possessed great wisdom. Not only had they made up for their past regrets, they'd even advanced a step further on their path towards the Tao and underwent an inconceivable transformation. At the bottom of it all, even though cultivators had the opportunity to return to the past and make up for their mistakes in the origin world, fortune and calamity were interdependent, and they had to take an extremely huge risk to do so. There was only a single kingdom in the origin world, and it was called Scholatry Kingdom. The Scholatry Kingdom's imperial capital was called Nank. All cultivators that entered the origin world and intended to return to the past had to arrive at Nank Imperial City, because only in this city could one comprehend the golden millet pillow of the universe Tao laws. It was a divine treasure formed from the quintessence energy of chaos. When one slept on it, it would be like sleepwalking and allow one to return to the river of one's life in the past. The vast heavens and the earth were covered in auspicious clouds. Lin Sun and Xia Zhi's figures appeared out of thin air, and they sized up the surroundings before flashing forward. They learned about the origin world a long time ago. However, they just arrived here after all, so they didn't know exactly which direction the Scholatry Kingdom was in. For now, they could only fly around and see if they were able to meet some fellow Taoists. Xia Zhi, if you have the chance to return to the past, what do you intend to do? Lin Sun asked with a smile on the way. Nothing at all. That's great. Xia Zhi spoke without hesitation, and then she asked Lin Sun, what about you? If you return to the past, have you thought about what you intend to do? Chapter 3265. Lin Sun thought for a moment, shook his head, and said, the regrets, remorse, hatred, and helplessness of the past. Although there are countless of them, they're all precious experiences for me. After thinking for a while, he said, as far as my Tao is concerned, I have gone through countless life and death experiences, so there are no defects that can be made up for. This was not boasting. If there had been any defects in his Tao in the past, how could he have achieved what he had today? Xia Zhi said softly, so you're not interested in it like me? Not really. I am very curious about the origin power of the traceback world. Don't you think it is very magical that it can make practitioners go back to the past and make up for the defects of life? Lin Sun asked with a smile. Xia Zhi nodded and said, then I will go and have a look. While they were talking, there was a sound of something breaking through the air in the distance. Several figures were teleporting in the sky at an extremely fast speed. Taoism Pier. As soon as Lin Sun spoke, he was interrupted by a cold voice. Get out of the way. It was a powerful figure in a black robe with a head full of blood hair. His whole body was surrounded by the golden power of rules as thick as a thumb, which was extremely powerful. They moved in a hurry as if they were fleeing for their lives. There was a trace of seriousness in their eyes. It seems that they are being hunted. Lin Sun was lost in thought. Suddenly, a voice that was chilly like ice resounded from extremely far away. Young brother Lin, please help me stop them. Lin Sun's eyes narrowed, and he immediately waved his sleeve and shouted, Tut! Boom! A natural chasm formed by the law of Tao appeared out of thin air, and it instantly crossed the sky and the earth, blocking in front of the black-robed man and his companions. You're courting death. The black-robed man's face darkened, and he angrily slashed at the barrier with his sword. The scarlet sword chi seemed to be the light of chaos, and it emitted the power to destroy the sky. It was extremely terrifying. Boom! But when the sword chi slashed down, it collapsed and dispersed inch by inch, and the barriers seemed to be indestructible and hadn't been shaken in the slightest. The black-robed man and his companions' faces changed slightly. When they wanted to take action again, Lin Sun had already come from a distance and said with a smile, "Everyone, please wait." Along with his arrival, a shapeless pressure instantly swept through the surroundings like a storm, and it caused the black-robed man and the others to feel suffocated as they felt a lethal threat assault their faces. Their expressions changed once more, and none of them dared to act arbitrarily again. "Who are you? How dare you interfere in our affairs?" The black-robed man's face turned ashen. The aura emitted by Lin Sun was too terrifying. Confronting Lin Sun was like facing a ruler that stood proudly beyond the 9 heavens, and it caused his Taoist heart to feel indescribably terrified. It was precisely because of this that, even though he was extremely anxious and furious in his heart, he didn't dare to act arbitrarily. Looking at the other 5 people beside him, although all of them were filled with killing intent, there was a hint of anxiety between their brows. "I have no enmity with all of you, but I am an old friend of the people who are pursuing you. Under such circumstances, I naturally have to stop all of you," Lin Sun said with a smile. "Thank you, my young friend." And it was also at this moment that a fiery red figure had moved from a very far distance. Her appearance was as beautiful and radiant as a young girl. It was Su Wanjun. All of a sudden, the hearts of the black-robed man and his companions sank again. "Senior, what's going on?" Lin Sun asked. "I'll have a good chat with you after I kill these despicable things first." Su Wanjun's clear eyes were filled with killing intent as she spoke. Clang! A light green Taoist sword swept across the sky, and its brilliance covered the sky. "Let's fight with her." How could the black-robed man and his companions sit still and wait for death? They all attacked with all their strength. However, in just a moment, their bodies stiffened, and they only felt a terrifying and boundless pressure pressing down like an ancient divine mountain, making their bodies unable to move. Not good. They were scared out of their wits, but it was too late. Su Wanjuan's sword intent was extremely swift and fierce. At this moment, with a burst of muffled sounds, the bodies of the black-robed man and his companions were all chopped into pieces by the sword light, and blood splattered like a waterfall. And before they died, their eyes couldn't help but subconsciously look at where Lin Sun was. Obviously, they had understood that the culprit who suppressed their cultivation was Lin Sun. Unfortunately, it was a little too late. Looking at the bloody scene, Su Wanjun was stunned for a moment. How could she not know that the reason why those opponents were killed so easily was because of Lin Sun? She put away the Taoist sword, looked Lin Sun up and down, and said, "I didn't expect that your cultivation has reached such a level now. Just by relying on power, he could suppress 6 boundless realm existences with remarkable abilities. This was something that even she was unable to accomplish." There was no doubt that after entering the ruins of wonderful Tao, Lin Sun must have undergone an earth-shaking transformation. This made Su Wanjun look at Lin Sun with a touch of surprise. Lin Sun said with a smile, "Senior, you flatter me. Now that the enemies have been killed, can you tell me the reason?" Su Wanjun glanced around and said, "Shall we talk as we walk? Where are we going?" "Nank City, the imperial capital of Huayan Kingdom, of course." "Haha, that's great. Xia Ji and I are planning to go there, but because we've just arrived, we don't know where Nank City is. With Senior leading the way, it won't be a problem," Lin Sun said with a smile. "Then let's go." Su Wanjun immediately set out with Lin Sun and Xia Ji, and they disappeared from this world. On the way, Lin Sun learned the ins and outs of the matter from Su Wanjun. Not long ago, Su Wanjun had once comprehended the golden millet pillow of the heavenly cycle Tao law in Nank City of Huayan Country. From there, she dreamt of the past, and her soul and cultivation entered the long river of life. Meanwhile, her Taoist body stayed in Nank City, and was protected by the restrictive power that she had set up in advance. But it wasn't long before Su Wanjun, who was trudging in the river of life, sensed danger. When she returned from her past, she noticed that the Taoist body that she had left in the city had encountered a fatal threat. And the threat came from the black-robed man and his group. They had broken through the restrictive power that Su Wanjun had set up and tried to take away the Taoist body that she had left inside. Fortunately, Su Wanjun's soul and cultivation had returned at the critical moment, and they had narrowly avoided such a disaster. Otherwise, the consequences would have been extremely serious. Because of this, the furious Su Wanjun had chased them all the way out of Nang City. "Senior, do they have a grudge against you?" Lin Sun couldn't help but ask after understanding the whole story. "No." Su Wanjun shook her head. "They did this for a simple purpose. They wanted to use this opportunity to force me to join the Zhen Division, one of the 9 divisions of the Taichu sect. They are the mandate messengers of the Zhen Division." Lin Sun was surprised. "That's right," Su Wanjun said. "In this traceback world, the strongest force is the mandate of Heaven emissaries of the Zhen Division. They act under the orders of the mandate of Heaven Dao Master of the Zhen Division, Lei Xianting. In this world, their leader is Heavenly Exalt Shuel Yin, an old fellow from the Devil era." At this point, she thought of something and said, "That's right, this Heavenly Venerable Shuel Yin is also related to Ying Tiansheng. They both come from the first Dao orthodoxy of the Devil era. So Ying Tiansheng has to call this Heavenly Venerable Shuel Yin ancestor." Lin Sun was startled and said, "So, it is very likely that Shuel Yin ancestor already knew that I killed Ying Tiansheng and other powerful figures of the Devil era?" "Of course," Su Wanjun said. "However, in my opinion, with Heavenly Venerable Shuel Yin's ability, I'm afraid he's no longer your match." Lin Sun smiled and said, "I have a hunch that if the mandate messengers of the Zhen Division know that I have arrived in Nang City, they will definitely make some trouble." "Then what are you going to do?" Su Wanjun asked. "That depends on what they want to do." Lin Sun smiled. While they were talking, the outline of a huge city appeared in the distance. According to Su Wanjun, they had already entered the border of Hawaiian country. They would only need half a day to reach the royal capital, Nang City. They did not delay and rushed all the way. Along the way, Lin Sun saw that there were many cities in Hawaiian country. In each city, there were many locust trees. The people living in the cities were all ordinary people without any cultivation base. This situation was the same as the mortal transformation world. Cultivators and ordinary people did not interfere with each other, and neither could affect the other. When Lin Sun saw Nang City from afar, he could not help but be surprised. It was a strange city that was built on an enormous locust tree that towered into the sky. Every single leaf covered an area of 30 kilometers, and row upon row of densely packed buildings were built on the veins of every single leaf. The trunk and branches of the locust tree formed roads that intersected with each other. They seemed messy, but they were all one. From afar, it looked like a city of trees. The royal capital, Nang City, is really different. Lin Sun sighed with emotion. He looked up the huge locust tree and saw the turbid waves of the mortal world rolling. There were countless people living in different areas and scenes of the world. Joys and sorrows were playing out. But at the top of the huge locust tree, there were many terrifying auras roiling. Those are the auras of powerful people. The crown of the tree is the core of Nang City. It is also the place where we cultivators can most easily sense the golden millet pillow of the heavenly cycle Tao. Su Wanjun said softly. She had been in the traceback world for more than 10 years, so she was very familiar with the situation here. As they talked, she had already flown over with Lin Sun and Xia Ji. They flew until they entered Nang City, passing through layers of leaves that were like the sky, and finally arrived at the crown of the tree. The leaves here were clustered together, and every leaf was tens of thousands of feet wide. Like a spider's web, there were all kinds of buildings and streets, forming a strange and dazzling scene. On one of the streets, Su Wanjun, Lin Sun, and Xia Ji floated down. And at this time, Lin Sun keenly sensed that in the nearby area, Many powerful people were looking over. However, they were not looking at him and Xia Ji. They were looking at Su Wanjun. P.S. There will be a second update tonight, but it will be very late. Brothers who can't wait can watch it tomorrow. Chapter 3266. Su Wanjun also noticed those gazes, but she didn't care. These fellows probably think that I won't dare to step into Nanx City after being targeted by those fellows from the Taichujin department. Lin Sun immediately understood and smiled. It just so happens that both Senior and I view the 9 divisions of the Taichu clan as enemies. If they come looking for us, I like to see how capable they are. His voice was calm and casual. As he spoke, the sky in the distance suddenly shook, and a majestic and dazzling figure appeared out of thin air. It was a handsome man wearing silver armor. He held a silver halberd in his hand, and his entire body flowed with the light of the great Tao. It really is you Demonis. The silver-armored man's eyes were like lightning as he locked on Su Wanjun from afar. A hint of killing intent appeared between his brows. Look, we just arrived, and someone is already rushing to die. A hint of coldness appeared on Su Wanjun's face. As she spoke, she attacked without the slightest hesitation. She withdrew her sword and slashed it towards the silver-armored man, and she didn't hesitate in the slightest and struck without the slightest hesitation. In the eyes of outsiders, Su Wanjun's actions were extremely domineering. The silver-armored man was the Zhen Department's mandate envoy. Almost no one in the Origin world dared to provoke him. But Su Wanjun was different. She didn't seem to know what fear was. Clang! A deafening collision resounded. Su Wanjun's sword was blocked by a purple rui. The one who attacked wasn't the silver-armored man, but an old man in a Taoist robe who appeared out of thin air. As soon as he appeared, the entire world went silent, and many people revealed expressions of fear. Emperor Shuelyan. In the current Origin world, Emperor Shuelyan was undoubtedly one of the strongest existences. Moreover, he was the leader of the Zhen Department of the Taichu clan in this world, and he had more than 30 Zhen Department's mandate envoys serving him. Su Wanjun, let me ask you, where are my companions from the Zhen Department? Emperor Shuelyan's expression was indifferent. 3 great Tao green lotuses appeared behind him, forming a triangle. His tall figure was bathed in a dazzling Tao light, and he looked like a god. You're a step too late. They died on my way back to this city. Su Wanjun said casually. Dead. Emperor Shuelyan's face darkened, and his eyes burst with killing intent. Looks like today's matter won't end peacefully. Boom! In the area around him, the void roiled, and terrifying figures suddenly appeared one after another. Every single one of them was glowing brilliantly and possessed monstrous might, including heavenly venerable Shuelyan and the silver-armored man. There were a total of 21 people. The enormous formation caused the hearts of the great figures that were scattered in the nearby area to go cold. All of them had a bad premonition, and they chose to retreat at the first possible moment and hide far away as they were deeply afraid of being swept into the battle. Little friend Lin, what do you think of this lineup? If you don't have the confidence, let's hide for now and slowly deal with them later. Su Wanjun said softly, don't feel embarrassed. The most important thing is to stay alive. This was the truth. At the very least, she wasn't confident that she could fight against such a lineup. If you hide for a while, do you think you can still leave today? Heavenly Venerable Shuelyan's expression was indifferent. The other mighty figures beside him also revealed cold smiles. They released their auras and enveloped the area, locking down the place where Su Wanjun and Lin Sun stood. However, Lin Sun didn't care about this at all. He smiled and said to Su Wanjun, staying alive is indeed the most important thing. However, I'm worried that they won't be able to survive today. These words were said casually, but the meaning behind them was full of arrogance. Heavenly Venerable Shuelyan and the others were stunned. Only then did they look at Lin Sun, who was beside Su Wanjun. However, before they could react, Su Wanjun had already raised the Tao sword in her hand and said, with your words, what are you hesitating for? Boom! She leaped into the air and pierced through the air with her Dao sword. Lin Sun finally saw that Su Wanjun was the kind of person who would start a fight at the slightest disagreement. She was too lazy to talk nonsense, too lazy to waste time, and too lazy to consider too many things. That was why she was so decisive when she made her move. Attack! Heavenly Venerable Shui Lian waved his hand. All the mighty figures beside him moved like gods on an expedition. Their killing intent filled the universe. Rumble, heaven and earth dimmed, and the void became chaotic. Heavenly Venerable Shui Lian and a total of 21 mighty figures attacked together. In the eyes of the spectators in the distance, they could be said to be invincible. All kinds of supreme Dao techniques intertwined and mixed with various eternal Dao soldiers. The power released was so great that just looking at it from afar made one's hair stand on end and feel despair. Su Wanjun didn't retreat. Instead, she charged forward with her sword. Suddenly, Lin Sun's figure appeared in front of Su Wanjun, and he said casually, "Senior, let me deal with these trash." When his voice sounded, a Dao sword appeared in his palm. While his voice was still echoing, the Dao sword in his hand had already slashed out casually. As soon as he finished speaking, the might of the sword strike he executed was like an all-conquering ray of light, and it easily crushed the attacks of all his enemies. Boom! The rain of light scattered, and all the eternal Dao soldiers were sent flying while wailing. Heavenly Venerable Shui Lian and the others were shaken to the point that their bodies staggered. Their blood was boiling, and their expressions changed. The power of one sword was actually so strong. The spectators in the distance were caught off guard. They were so shocked that they almost couldn't believe their eyes. This was too fierce, wasn't it? Who was he? Where did Su Wanjun find such a heaven-defying helper? At this moment, even Su Wanjun was stunned. She knew that Lin Sun had become incomparably strong, but she didn't expect him to be so strong. Only Xie Ji in the distance was quiet and motionless. "I know, he is Lin Sun." Suddenly, a mighty figure beside Heavenly Venerable Shui Lian shouted in surprise. "Lin Sun!" Heavenly Venerable Shui Lian and the others' hearts twitched as they recalled the various deeds and rumors about Lin Sun. It was just that none of them expected Lin Sun to come so quickly. It had only been 3 months since he left the first heaven realm, the mortal transformation world, and he had already arrived at the 4th heaven realm, the origin tracing world. "Since everyone knows me, there is no need to talk nonsense." As Lin Sun spoke, he had already swung his sword. "Kill!" Heavenly Venerable Shui Lian and the others didn't dare to be negligent and attacked with all their strength. However, all resistance was destined to be futile. The disparity in strength was too great. Even the boundless Tao Lord was no match for Lin Sun, let alone the old guys like Heavenly Venerable Shui Lian. Lin Sun's figure was like lightning as he swung his sword forward. It was as if he was cutting melons and vegetables. Every time he swung his sword, there would be a bloody scene. Some were pierced by the Taoist sword, some were killed by their bodies and primordial spirits, some were crushed by the sword intent, and some, in just a few blinks of an eye, more than half of the enemies in the field died one after another. The bloody scene made the spectators' hands and feet turn cold, and they were completely stunned. For us, these are strong opponents on the boundless Tao path, but for him, it's like killing chickens and monkeys. Su Wanjun's heart was filled with indescribable shock. The gap in strength was too great. Heavenly Venerable Shui Lian and the others were not strong enough. As a result, as soon as the battle began, it was completely one-sided. "Go!" Heavenly Venerable Shui Lian and the remaining powerful figures turned around and fled. But how could Lin Sun let them do as they wished? He stepped forward, and the Taoist sword in his hand trembled, making a clear and melodious sword sound. Then, endless sword chi rose into the sky, covering the sky and the ground. It was like an ocean of swords surging out from the endless time and space, completely submerging the void. It also submerged the figures of Heavenly Venerable Shui Lian and the others. Their Taoist bodies cracked and disintegrated one by one, like ice and snow being smelted by fire. One by one, their bodies and souls were destroyed. In just 10 breaths of time, all 21 Jin Division Heavenly Mandate envoys had fallen. Clang! When Lin Sun put away the Taoist sword, the world was silent, and only the smell of blood filled the air silently. It was also at this time that Su Wanjun woke up from her dream. She looked at Lin Sun and said in a daze, "Has your cultivation already reached the level of boundless Tao, Lord?" She was so surprised, and she was sure that even the boundless Tao Lord was not as powerful as Lin Sun, and it was impossible for him to do this. Not yet. Lin Sun shook his head. There's still some distance. There's still some distance. Su Wanjun couldn't help but be speechless. He hadn't reached the level of boundless Tao Lord, but he possessed strength that was far stronger than the boundless Tao Lord. This simply overturned her understanding. "Senior, let's leave this place first and find a place to talk." Lin Sun looked around and saw many auras rushing over from afar. Obviously, they were alarmed by the battle just now. "All right." Su Wanjun immediately sobered up and calmed down, and she led Lin Sun and Xia Ji to turn around and leave this area. Only when their figures disappeared did the powerful figures that were watching the battle gradually recover from their shock. How terrifying! Lin Sun is too strong. Even the boundless Tao Lord isn't as strong as him. Heavenly Venerable Shuel Yin and the others have reigned supreme in this world for many years, yet they were actually slaughtered like chickens and dogs. If I didn't see this with my own eyes, I wouldn't believe it. All sorts of discussions sounded. At this moment, many cultivators had come after hearing the news. When they learned about the battle just now, these powerful figures' hearts trembled and they gasped endlessly. And the news of this battle spread rapidly in the origin world on the same day. Every powerful figure that heard the news couldn't help but be dumbfounded. Everyone knew that there was probably no one in the origin world who could go against Lin Sun. Moreover, Heavenly Venerable Shuel Yin and the other mandate envoys of the Jin Department were already dead. If the remaining mandate envoys scattered in the origin world heard news, they would probably not dare to look for trouble with Lin Sun again. They even had to worry about whether Lin Sun would look for trouble with them. In short, on the first day that Lin Sun arrived in the origin world, he caused a great uproar because of this battle, and he himself became completely famous after this battle. Lin Sun was completely unaware of all this, and even if he knew, he was bound to not care. At this moment, he and Xia Ji had already settled in a quiet courtyard in Nank City under Su Wanjun's lead. Chapter 3267. In the courtyard, Su Wanjun, dressed in a red dress, held a pot of wine in her white hand. She filled Lin Sun and Xia Ji's cups one by one, and the fragrance of the wine filled the courtyard. After that, she poured herself another cup and said, "This wine is called Sincerity, and I asked for it from an old friend of mine. I've kept it for a very long time, and I'm usually reluctant to drink it myself. Have a taste." As she spoke, she drank it in one gulp, and a touch of redness appeared on her white and delicate face, adding to her beauty. Lin Sun raised his cup and tasted it. His mind was suddenly in a trance, as if thousands of flavors were spreading in his chest. After a while, Lin Sun nodded and said, "It's indeed good wine. This should be a gift from that senior swordsman, right?" Su Wanjun looked at Lin Sun in surprise and said, "Yes, but don't ask me about him, otherwise," she pointed to her heart, "my state of mind will have problems." Lin Sun's heart trembled. He understood the great danger behind these words. It was very likely that in Su Wanjun's heart, things related to that swordsman had become an obsession of hers, and she was so paranoid that she didn't want to mention it to anyone. Originally, Lin Sun planned to tell her about the 3-inch wooden sword and the spiritual affinity, but now he dispelled the idea. Next, they drank and talked about things related to the origin world. This made Lin Sun have a further understanding of the universal Tao of this world. The origin power of chaos in the origin world turned into the universal Tao that maintained the whole world. If practitioners wanted to leave this world, they had to comprehend the golden millet pillow. In this way, whether or not they traced back and made up for the regrets of their past life, they could attract the chaotic Tao fruit and enter the gate of heaven. In these years, Su Wanjun had the opportunity to leave, but she didn't want to. She even decided to settle down in the origin world. As for when to leave, it was entirely up to her. Although she didn't say the reason, Lin Sun could guess it. Through the golden millet pillow, Su Wanjun could return to the long river of her past life. In her past life, the existence of that swordsman undoubtedly occupied the most important position in her heart. "Senior, I have something to say, but I don't know if I should say it." Lin Sun muttered. "I know what you want to say. Don't worry, I won't try to make up for my flaws in the past. If I do that, I won't be able to change anything. Instead, I'll be consigned to eternal damnation." Su Wanjun's expression was indifferent, as if she had already seen through everything. After some thought, she said, "When I first arrived at the myriad profundity Dao ruins, I thought that he would be waiting for me here. But only now do I know that he has already been reincarnated a long time ago. But it doesn't matter. I believe that he will come back sooner or later. In the past, he waited for me here. In the future, I will wait for him here." At the end of her speech, her voice carried a firm and calm undertone. Lin Sun sighed in his heart. He did not understand the relationship between Su Wanjun and the swordsman, but he could feel the infatuation in her heart. He was destined to be of no help in this matter. That night, in the courtyard, Xia Ji sat cross-legged with her eyes closed. She calmly sensed the heavenly cycle Dao law of this world. Lin Sun stood not far away to protect her. Time passed quietly in the tranquil night. It didn't take long for Lin Sun's keen senses to sense that wisps of mysterious chaotic origin aura were descending from the sky, bathing Xia Ji's figure. On the other hand, Xia Ji's vital energy silently underwent a change at this moment. It seemed as if her soul had left her body, and it brought along her cultivation and vanished into thin air. Only her beautiful body was bathed in the aura of the chaos origin. She has already sensed the golden millet pillow and entered her past life, Su Wanjun said softly. Lin Sun's eyes flashed, and he said, "The original power of the origin tracing world allows practitioners to trace the past. The power of rules involved in it is too magical. The past, present, and future represent a person's entire life. If one examines it carefully, one would notice that it's related to the energy of fate, karma, and time. Returning to the past is like going against the flow of time. Making up for the flaws is tantamount to changing fate, and once fate changes, karma changes along with it." Su Wanjun said casually. "However, the quintessence of chaos in the origin world is clearly not so simple. It's capable of allowing us boundless realm existences to return to the past and change fate and karma. This sort of power probably surpasses fate, karma, and time." Lin Sun nodded. He'd thought of these problems as well, but he had a different opinion. He said, "It isn't to the extent of surpassing fate, karma, and time. In my opinion, the force contained within the chaotic origin of the origin tracing world is related to the ultimate profundities of these three supreme grand Daos." He'd grasped the laws of fate and time as well, so he was very clearly aware of how obscure and mysterious these two supreme grand Daos were beyond imagination. Even if it was him now, he'd merely cultivated these two supreme grand Daos to the extent of the boundless laws. As for the ultimate profundities of these two supreme grand Daos, even he wasn't aware of them. In the end, it still depended on one's own cultivation. The Dao was boundless. In the lower 5 realms, cultivators could comprehend the aura and Dao insight of the Dao. In the longevity realm, one could comprehend the laws of longevity. The Saint realm controlled the laws of Saint Dao. The Emperor realm controlled the laws of Emperor. The Immortal realm controlled the laws of immortality. And the Eternal realm controlled the laws of eternity. But whether it was the aura, Dao insight, Saint Dao, Emperor Dao, or the laws of immortality and the laws of eternity, they were all about the control of the Grand Daos. The reason was that the continuous improvement of one's cultivation made one's understanding of the grand Taoist deeper and deeper step by step. Just like now, although Lin Sun's cultivation was incredibly powerful, the power of the grand Taoist he'd mastered was only in the scope of the boundless realm. The power of the origin tracing world was obviously related to the power of fate, time, and karma, but it was far beyond Lin Sun's current level of control and comprehension. This was why he made such a judgment. You're right. The boundless realm is regarded as the ultimate realm of the grand Taoist. Reaching the consummation of the boundless realm is equivalent to setting foot on the ultimate realm of the grand Taoist. But I've been thinking that the boundless realm is just the last realm of the eternal Taoist. Moreover, is there an even higher path towards the Tao above this eternal path towards the Tao? Su Wanjun murmured softly. This is destined to be an unsolvable question. After all, if there really is a higher Taoist, why would he choose to reincarnate and recultivate? He was naturally the swordsman. Lin Sun said, I think the reason why the senior swordsman recultivated was that he had seen the higher Taoist. And the purpose of his recultivation was to find a way to really set foot on this higher Taoist and completely transcend the boundless realm of the eternal Taoist. Su Wanjun was stunned. After a moment of silence, she said, Maybe. This kind of secret involved the ultimate transcendence. No one in the entire ruins of wonderful Tao could give a clear answer so far. Therefore, there are all kinds of deliberations and speculations. Do you want to comprehend the heavenly cycle law? I can help you and Xia Ji take care of your Taoist body, Su Wanjun said. Lin Sun shook his head and said, Let's wait for Xia Ji to wake up. Su Wanjun didn't force him. To her surprise, only an hour later, Xia Ji's delicate body suddenly trembled, and then her body glowed with the original qi and life fluctuation. She opened her eyes quietly, and the origin of chaos shrouding her body disappeared. So fast. Su Wanjun couldn't help asking. Xia Ji stood up and said, I just looked through the past and didn't waste any time. Don't you want to change something? Su Wanjun asked again. I think I care more about the present than the past and the future. Xia Ji said without hesitation. Su Wanjun looked at Xia Ji and then at Lin Sun, seeming to understand. She couldn't help feeling a little emotional in her heart. If one day she could be like him, not care about the past and the future, and only care about the present life, how happy it would be. Next, Lin Sun sat cross-legged and began to meditate on the heavenly cycle law of this world. In merely an instant, his divine sense sensed a strand of profound and obscure quintessence energy of chaos, and his mind seemed to rise into the heavens and arrive at a boundless expanse of nothingness. Then, a jade pillow formed by the origin of chaos appeared in his mind. The jade pillow was surging with a mysterious breath of fate, cause and effect, and time. When Lin Sun thought of it, in an instant, his consciousness was in a trance, as if he was sleepwalking for thousands of years. His soul and cultivation also quietly left his Taoist body. Hua, in the vast nothingness, a mighty river rushed out of the nothingness and flowed to the depths of the endless nothingness. Lin Sun's figure appeared above the river. Was this the long river of the past life? When Lin Sun looked at it, countless strange pictures suddenly appeared from the waves of the river, including the scene when he was born, the bits and pieces of the mind prison with Liu Boya, the quiet years when he was a teenager living in Feiyun village. The surging waves seemed like they were formed from the nodes of his past life, and they drew out a magnificent river of life. A long river of Lin Sun's past life. When seeing such an incredible scene, Lin Sun couldn't help but have many uncontrollable thoughts. There was no medicine for regret in this world. But now, what was the difference between having the opportunity to make up for the regrets of the past life and getting the real medicine for regret? If he had such an opportunity now, as long as he was willing, he could change everything in the past. Faced with such a choice, how many people in the world could resist the temptation? But soon, Lin Sun calmed down. Like Xia Ji, His past life didn't need to be made up and changed at all. Even if there were many regrets, hatred, helplessness, and remorse, those were precious experiences for Lin Sun, and they were all the cornerstones of his road of Tao. Only in this way could he have today's Tao. Chapter 32:68. Standing in the river of life, Lin Sun looked at the scenes of his past, and there were many unspeakable feelings in his heart. Who didn't make many mistakes when he was young? Who didn't go through wind and rain and stumble in the past? But it was the experience of the past that made him who he was today. From the perspective of today, Lin Sun could clearly find that he didn't do many things well enough at that time, and even made many mistakes, so that there were many regrets in his life. But this made it more vivid. The wonderful thing about life was that there were ups and downs in the situation. On the contrary, the regrets of the past were an indispensable part of life. This was also the reason why Lin Sun didn't intend to make up for the past in the river of life. The past can't be chased, changed, or changed. Otherwise, the fate and cause and effect will change. When the memory changes, it will no longer be my life. Lin Sun murmured in his heart. The reason why he came to the river of life was that he wanted to see himself in the past and the scenes of the past, just like Xia Ji. When his own memory overlapped with the scenes of the past, there would naturally be a different feeling in his heart. After a long time, Lin Sun was about to leave when he suddenly realized something and looked at the river of life again. My entire life has been linked to all sorts of karma since I was born, and it caused my fate to become different after I was born. If I trace the source, then the thing that affected my fate at the very beginning was the origin spirit Vane's natural talent, the grand devouring abyss. The light in Lin Sun's eyes flickered. There were many causes and effects that affected a person's fate, which were intricate and complicated. Perhaps a trifle or a casual thought could change a person's life. But if the cause and effect were dispelled and the original cause and effect were carefully explored, one would find that the beginning of any cause and effect was the beginning of determining the direction of one's fate. If one's fate was a big tree, then the beginning of one's fate was the root of a big tree. Then the cause and effect that affected the trajectory of one's fate were like the branches and leaves of a big tree. They seemed to be lush and complicated, but they all started from the root. The cause and effect that affected the root would support a complete life like the trunk of a tree. For Lin Sun, the talent of devouring abyss was undoubtedly the biggest cause and effect that determined his fate at the beginning. Because of this talent, his spiritual vein was taken away from him at birth. Because of this talent, it had always affected his path of cultivation. The lower 5 realms, the longevity tribulation realm, the saint realm, the emperor realm, the eternal Tao path. Up until now, his cultivation was inextricably linked to the grand abyss devouring heaven. With this talent, he possessed a foundation and power that far surpassed ordinary people. It allowed him to awaken various innate abilities, such as the death seal, the banished gate, the seal of time, the blade of time, and so on. But now, doubts arose in Lin's mind. Where did the devouring abyss talent come from? Lin Sun was silent, and many past events emerged in his mind. It was true that the devouring abyss was an innate talent that he was born with. It was something that only the direct bloodline of the Luo family could possess. However, it was only later that Lin Sun found out that this talent began to appear from the Lord of Tongtian, Luo Tongtian. In other words, the Luo family didn't possess the devouring abyss innate talent at all. The reason for this was that Lin Sun already knew that when Luo Tongtian was exploring the ruins of fate, he had discovered that from the land of eternity the devouring abyss innate talent he had obtained in the boat. It was also Luo Tongtian who took away the eternal boat, the treasure that originally belonged to the divine emperor of eternal night. As for the heaven accessing place, it was a secret key to open the eternal boat. When Lin Sun was young, he regained the devouring abyss with the help of the heaven accessing place, which gave him the opportunity to change his fate. No matter what, the devouring abyss talent came from the eternal boat. Now, the The reason why Lin Sun had doubts was that the devouring abyss talent was the original cause and effect that influenced the beginning of his fate. Since the devouring abyss talent came from the eternal boat, it naturally meant that the beginning of his fate was influenced by the power of the eternal boat. This was something that Lin Sun had never thought about before. Yet now, when he stood on the river of life and thought back to the past, and when he traced back to the source of his fate and karma, he suddenly noticed that he actually hadn't truly investigated the cause that affected his fate at the very beginning, the arc of eternity. Where did it come from? Thinking of this, Lin Sun had a strange feeling in his heart. In the origin world, tracing back to the origin could allow practitioners to go back to the past and come to the long river of life to make up for their regrets. But once they did this, it was tantamount to trying to change their fate and cause and effect, which would lead to a series of unpredictable variables and make the past life change accordingly. This kind of change depended on each other. Some died, and some realized a new change in their fate. For Lin Sun, there was no regret to make up for. But when he realized the original cause and effect of the devouring abyss talent, Lin Sun found that he was wrong. If he didn't trace back to the real origin of the devouring abyss talent, everything he had now would be destroyed in the most fatal way if something happened to the devouring abyss talent in the future. Because this was the most critical cause and effect that affected his life, just like the origin of countless causes and effects in his past life. Realizing this problem, Lin Sun couldn't help but feel a little cold on his back. Taking a deep breath, Lin Sun got rid of distractions and began to think. The devouring abyss talent came from the eternal boat, and the eternal boat came from the divine emperor of eternal night. But where did the divine emperor of eternal night get this treasure? Soon, Lin Sun thought of a possibility. Without hesitation, he left the long river of life. In a courtyard in Nank City, Lin Sun, who was sitting cross-legged, opened his eyes. Su Wanjun noticed it immediately and said, "You came back so soon. So, my little friend, you didn't do anything in the past?" Lin Sun thought, "Before that, I accidentally found a problem, which is very likely to be the deepest hidden danger in my life." Saying this, he looked at Xia Ji and said, "Xia Ji, can you remember the origin of the eternal boat?" Xia Ji had already refined the Tao left by the divine emperor of eternal night, and also understood some of the divine emperor's past experiences and memories. Hearing this, she thought for a moment and said, "This treasure came from the eternal gate and was taken out by the divine emperor of eternal night a long time ago." Sure enough, Lin Sun's eyes revealed a strange look. Previously on the long river of life, he had speculated this answer. And until now, he still remembered that the Lord of Tontian had also gone to the Eternal Gate, but encountered a fatal disaster. At that time, a horrible golden figure appeared from the Eternal Gate, and there was also a Tao Bell. The Tao Bell, surrounded by chaotic qi, seriously injured the Lord of Tontian in one fell swoop. And how could Lin Sun not recognize that Tao Bell? It was naturally the primordial bell from the primordial ruler. My devouring abyss talent came from the eternal boat, and the eternal boat came from the eternal gate, and in the eternal gate there was the treasure of the primordial ruler. Lin Sun felt a chill in his heart. There must be a mystery behind this. If he hadn't looked back on the long river of life, if he hadn't deduced the cause and effect at the beginning of fate on a whim, how could he have noticed this? And if the mystery of cause and effect was not solved, when he met the primordial ruler in the future, even if his cultivation was the same as the primordial ruler's. The more Lin Sun thought about it, the more serious his expression became. After a long time, he asked, "Xia Ji, can you still remember what happened in the Eternal Gate in the memory of the Divine Emperor of Eternal Night?" Xia Ji frowned and thought, "If you didn't ask, I really didn't care about it. Now that I think about it, I find that the memory of the Eternal Gate seems to have been erased, so I can't remember it no matter how hard I try." After hearing this, Lin Sun was even more certain that this matter wasn't simple. "Little friend, what exactly happened?" Su Wanjun couldn't help but ask. She could keenly sense that Lin Sun's state of mind was a little unstable. Originally, I thought that my fate had always been in my control, but now I realize that from the moment I was born, I might have been tainted with a great cause and effect. Lin Sun took a deep breath and told her about the origin of the devouring abyss. After hearing this, Su Wanjuan's beautiful eyes also narrowed, and she said, "You suspect that the devouring abyss talent is related to the primordial ruler? It's hard to say, but I'm sure that he must have understood this talent very well. Otherwise, how could his treasure, the primordial bell, appear in the eternal gate?" Lin Sun's emotions were a little complicated, and his voice also became low. "In my opinion, this matter is very simple," said Su Wanjun. Su Wanjun said, "Your talent comes from the Ark of Eternity, and the Ark of Eternity comes from the Door of Eternity. If you want to find out the truth and understand everything, you might be able to enter the Door of Eternity through the River of Life." Lin Sun had also thought of this, but he had more ideas. A long time ago, the primordial ruler also came to this traceback world. He must have known that this world can allow practitioners to trace their past lives and make changes. Lin Sun said, "If so, would the primordial ruler have already guessed that when I noticed the hidden danger of the devouring abyss, I would try to enter the eternal gate through the river of life to change everything?" Su Wanjuan's expression changed slightly, and she said, "It is indeed possible." Lin Sun said, "If he had already guessed it, how could he not have left behind a backup plan? For example, if I make changes now, will it be tantamount to walking into a trap?" This, even Su Wanjun was a little uncertain, because the cause and effect involved were too complicated, and what Lin Sun said at the moment was just his speculation. No one knew what the hidden danger was. Not only her, but Lin Sun's own state of mind had not been able to calm down until now. Who would have thought that when looking back on the past life, he would find such a hidden danger? Every drink and every peck was cause and effect. Everything happened for a reason, and there must be an effect. With Lin Sun's current cultivation and mastery of the law of fate, how could he not understand that once his talent, the devouring abyss, had an accident, it would definitely be a fatal blow? Chapter 3269. What troubled Lin Sun was, if the origin of the devouring abyss was related to the absolute beginning ruler, then the absolute beginning ruler would definitely expect that Lin Sun would try to make up for it after he found out about it. Under such circumstances, the absolute beginning ruler might have already laid a backup plan and was waiting for Lin Sun to walk into the trap. But if he didn't make up for it, it would be an unpredictable hidden danger after all, and doubts could bring fatal threats at any time. At this moment, Xia Ji suddenly said, "Lin Sun, you don't have to go to the River of Life to go to the Eternal Gate." She waved her sleeve. Buzz! The Eternal Boat, which looked like a bronze coffin, appeared out of thin air. Xia Ji said, "The heaven accessing place is not only the secret key to open the Eternal Boat, but also the star map to the Eternal Gate. When you use the talent power of the devouring abyss as a guide and operate the heaven accessing place, you can condense the Eternal Gate." After knowing this, Lin Sun was stunned at first, and then showed a look of joy. "I didn't expect that the Eternal Gate was so far away, but right in front of me. You didn't ask me before. I thought you already knew," Xia Ji said. Lin Sun was embarrassed. After all, he had never intended to explore the secret of the Eternal Gate before, so he didn't know about it. Su Wanjun smiled and said, "In this way, you don't have to worry about uncontrollable changes in the course of fate and cause and effect of the past because of making up for the shortcomings of the past. If you didn't go to the River of Life to change the past, it naturally wouldn't cause changes in the course of fate and cause and effect." Lin Sun also felt much more relaxed and stepped in front of the Eternal Boat. This treasure was vast and heavy, and in the center was a mysterious star map, which was formed by the heaven accessing place. "I like to see what's hidden in the Eternal Gate." Lin Sun took a deep breath and pressed his right palm on the star map. As he operated the talent power of the devouring abyss, the mysterious star map suddenly glowed and produced a burst of strange ripples. Boom! Suddenly, there was a muffled sound in the void, and a door appeared as if it had broken through the barrier of ancient times. Inside the door, the chaotic aura was steaming, and light and shadow were flowing, as if millions of stars were revolving around it. The Eternal Gate. Lin Sun recognized it at a glance. Back then, the Lord of Tongtian had encountered this portal. But before Lin Sun could think further, a terrifying aura emerged from the Eternal Gate, and a majestic figure that emitted boundless golden light appeared, like a legendary supreme god of war. Dying. The eyes of the golden figure were like burning lamps, instantly locking on Lin Sun. Without any hesitation, he directly waved a golden halberd and chopped at Lin Sun. Boom! The halberd swept across the sky, setting off an endless rain of light. Lin Sun remained motionless until the golden halberd chopped down. He suddenly stretched out his right hand and grasped in the void. The golden halberd was firmly grasped. With the strength of Lin Sun's palms and fingers, the mysterious golden halberd collapsed inch by inch, and the golden figure holding the halberd was shaken and staggered. A boundless existence! The golden figure exclaimed in surprise. However, he didn't shrink back. A golden halberd condensed once more in his hand, and when he swung it, it caused an expanse of boundlessly terrifying light of calamity to descend. That was the power of the fateless calamity. Early on in the ruins of creation, Lin Sun had encountered a similar calamity. But at that time, it was the emissary of destiny, Shannying, who had borrowed it. Now it was executed by the golden figure. Seeing this, Lin Sun was even more certain that the Eternal Gate was closely related to the absolute beginning. Bang! Lin Sun finally moved when the light of calamity arrived. He swung his fist and smashed it as easily as crushing dry weeds, and it easily smashed apart the energy of the fateless calamity. On the other hand, the terrifying force of the punch even caused the golden figure's body to crack, and the light of the Tao around it dispersed like rain. Bang! The golden figure was blasted back, and he turned around and fled towards the depths of the Eternal Gate before he could stabilize himself. Xia Ji, stay here with Senior Su. I'll be back soon. Lin Sun's figure had already charged into the Eternal Gate as he spoke. A path paved with the light of the Tao appeared within the Eternal Gate, and it stretched towards the depths of the Eternal Gate. As soon as he entered, Lin Sun sensed a mysterious and unfamiliar aura of the laws, and it was like the order of the Tao laws that maintain a world. Could it be that there's a world behind the Eternal Gate? Lin Sun thought as he flashed towards the depths of the path. His divine sense could sense that the injured golden figure was fleeing in front of him. Seeing this, Lin Sun chased after it unhurriedly. After a full quarter of an hour, suddenly, Lin Sun's spiritual awareness lost the sense of the golden figure, as if it had disappeared all of a sudden. After thinking for a while, Lin Sun continued to move forward. Not long after, he saw the exit of this path, which was slowly rotating like a whirlpool. With just a glance, Lin Sun knew that the golden figure had left this whirlpool. Whoosh! Lin Sun's body flashed, and he condensed a doppelganger, which rushed into the whirlpool first, and his original body followed closely behind. After a moment of dizziness, Lin Sun was moved to another world. Before Lin Sun could see the scene of this world clearly, a dull roar of collision sounded, and the bright light of the Tao splashed and spread. It was also at this time that Lin Sun saw that the doppelganger of Tao, who had arrived before him, had been ambushed. It was a group of 9 cultivators, each of whom was shining brightly and had a terrifying aura. The treasures they controlled were all filled with the aura of disaster. That was the power of the great silence fatal disaster, which was enough to make people in the boundless realm tremble in fear. Obviously, if Lin Sun's original body had rushed in first, he was destined to be besieged like this. Whoosh! Lin Sun raised his hand and waved, and the doppelganger of Tao, who was being besieged, turned into a light and disappeared into thin air. The group of cultivators was stunned, and then they all realized that they had been fooled. Their faces darkened, and they rushed towards Lin Sun without hesitation. Boom! In an instant, the overwhelming aura of disaster turned into thunder and lightning, shrouding Lin Sun. They all had the cultivation of the boundless realm, but they were far from being powerful. But because they could borrow the power of the great silence fatal disaster, they were a great threat. If it were other cultivators, they would have retreated in fear. But how could Lin Sun be afraid of this? Then, he stretched out his right hand and swiped in the air. The power of disaster that whistled over was easily sliced apart like a piece of cloth and split into pieces. Along with Lin Sun's stride, a terrifying power swept out along with it. Bang! 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 The bodies of the 9 cultivators stiffened, and then they were pressured to the point of kneeling on the ground while their cultivation was restrained. Looking at their expressions again, it was already filled with fear and astonishment. Lin Sun paid no attention to all of this. He swept the surroundings with his gaze. The sky was dim, and the ground was boundless. There was no sun, moon, stars, plants, mountains, or rivers. It was completely empty. It seemed like there was only heaven and earth, and it was boundless. This was the world behind the door of eternity? Lin Sun raised his brows, and then he looked at the group of cultivators that had been restrained and said, "I've just arrived here, and there are many things I don't know. So I'd like to ask all of you." It wasn't that he didn't want to search their souls, but he recalled what Enchanting had encountered. After Enchanting was restrained at that time, he'd once said that emissaries of destiny like him, who'd utilized the lifeless tribulation of great silence, had long since left a brand that belonged to the absolute beginning sovereign in their bodies. So once Enchanting's soul was searched, he would definitely perish at the first possible moment. So Lin Sun didn't do that now. The expressions of those cultivators were unsightly. Even though they were restrained and their lives were on the line, all of them remained silent. This caused Lin Sun to frown. He was just about to say something when a warm and clear laughter suddenly resounded from the extremely distant horizon. "Lin Sun, I've been waiting for you for a very long time. Just come look for me if you want to know anything." The figure was like a morning bell, and it revealed a force that struck directly at the heart. If it was any other ordinary person, that person's mental state would be silently subdued in an instant, and that person wouldn't be able to help but feel reverence towards the owner of this voice and obey its orders. However, for Lin Sun, who'd attained a state of mind that was connected to the ages, the force contained within this voice didn't affect him in the slightest. Suddenly, Lin Sun's pupils constricted because he saw those 9 cultivators that he'd suppressed on the ground had transformed into ash and vanished after this voice resounded. It's just some ignorant subordinates. Take it as an apology to young brother. The clear and warm voice resounded once more, and it was casual and natural. It seemed as if annihilating 9 boundless realm existences was nothing to him at all. This casual attitude was filled with coldness and indifference. Lin Sun went silent for a short moment before he suddenly smiled and said, "There's no need to apologize. I came here because I wanted to see exactly what secrets are hidden behind the door of eternity. If you're unable to give me a satisfactory answer, then I'm afraid I won't let you off." His voice was still drifting through the air when he'd already strode forward, and he instantly traversed the boundless heavens and the earth to arrive at the place the voice came from. The heavens and the earth here were still dim, yet there were practically countless balls of flames floating in space, and it was impossible to see the end of them with a single glance. They gave others the feeling that it was like a myriad of stars were embellished there, and they burned silently. Moreover, the flames they emanated varied in strength, brightness, and color. Not far away, there was a platform built. There was nothing special about the platform, but because of the figure that sat cross-legged on it, it instantly gave the platform an indescribable charm. It seemed as if it stood towering above the 9 heavens, yet also seemed to be floating at the end of eternity, boundless and indistinct. The figure wore a black robe, and his clothes were neat and tidy. Strands of translucent and crystalline divine chains of calamity coiled around his body, and they were like grains of sand in the Ganges River. They were boundless, and he himself was impervious to all tribulations and was supreme. When he saw this person, Lin Sun's pupils constricted abruptly. The absolute beginning dominator. Early on in the void above the sky of the mortal transformation world, Lin Sun had seen the Tao image that this person left behind, so how could he not recognize this person? However, Lin Sun had never imagined that he would meet this terrifying existence that could be said to be a supreme legend in the world behind the door of eternity. Wasn't it said that he was trapped by that swordsman's sword shackles many years ago and was suppressed in a secret realm in the profound God domain? At this moment, the black-robed man on the platform had already raised his head to look at Lin Sun. His voice was gentle, and his clear eyes carried a smile as he said, "Little friend Lin, there's no need to be nervous, and there's no need to be persistent. I've been waiting for you, and I'll naturally resolve the doubts in your heart." Chapter 3270. The atmosphere was quiet. In addition to the countless flame balls, there seemed to be only absolute beginnings sitting cross-legged on the platform, and Lin Sun, who had just arrived here. Hearing absolute beginning's words, Lin Sun was surprised and asked, "Have you been waiting for me?" "Yes, to be exact, what you see in front of you is just a part of my willpower." Absolute beginning's appearance was not handsome, but there was a kind of fresh air, like the green bamboo on the cliff bank, standing alone in the sea of clouds. The aura on his body was also gentle and calm, completely not giving off any sense of oppression or hostility. But Lin Sun did not dare to underestimate him. Even if it was just a Dharma avatar, the thread of its existence was completely different when its original body was the absolute beginning realm. "Why are you waiting for me?" Lin Sun asked again. Absolute beginning smiled and said, "You probably have noticed that there may be something wrong with your talent. So you come to trace the source, right?" "Yes." Lin Sun did not deny it. Absolute beginning asked curiously, "Do you know that doing so will bring many unexpected changes in your past life, and all kinds of unpredictable causes and effects will occur, which will affect your current path of cultivation?" At this moment, Lin Sun suddenly realized a problem. The willpower left by absolute beginning seemed to subconsciously think that Lin Sun came from the river of life in the origin world. Thinking of this, Lin Sun was silent for a moment and said bluntly, "You guessed wrong. I came here with the eternal boat, which will not have any impact on my past, nor will it affect my current cultivation." Absolute beginning was stunned for a moment, and then laughed heartily. "You know I guessed wrong. Why do you tell me the truth?" Lin Sun said, "At this time, I don't want to hide anything. I also hope that you can do the same. Otherwise, I will only be very disappointed." "Disappointed about what?" Absolute beginning asked curiously. Lin Sun said indifferently, "Disappointed that a person like you can only play some small tricks. In this case, there will be one less enemy in this world who can make me respect." Absolute beginning was silent for a moment, and suddenly said with emotion, "You remind me of a swordsman's words. The most difficult thing to meet in this world is a respectable enemy." Unfortunately, he abandoned his cultivation and left. This matter made me sad for a period of time. Fortunately, there's still Chun Shi in this world. There's that old geezer sub-hoodie who's willing to give up his entire life to play a game with me. And there's Golden Cicada who goes against my Grand Tao. After a pause, he smiled and looked at Lin Sun. "Now there's you. This way, my life will not be lonely. My Tao will have an enemy." How delightful. The space between his brows was filled with joy and vigor. "Then should I feel honored?" Lin Sun said. The beginning had a carefree smile on his face. "There is no need for that. What I admire right now is your mentality. As for your cultivation path, it is not good enough to be my opponent." His tone was calm, yet it seemed as if he was stating a fact. Lin Sun didn't feel unhappy at all. Instead, he corrected him seriously. "You're wrong. I may not be a match for you now, but your willpower can't be a match for me either." He paused for a moment and said, "Not to mention that when I arrive at the profound God domain, who can be sure that I would be inferior to you at that time?" The beginning clapped his hands and said with a smile, "Well said. There are too many stupid people in the world. Those who could talk to me are only 2 or 3. I am more and more looking forward to how you will leave this place now." Lin Sun also smiled. "Whether you look forward to it or not, since I can come, I can leave. From the moment they met to the present, they were talking and laughing like a pair of friends. There was no atmosphere of hostility at all. However, the temperament and attitude revealed in the conversation were like invisible sharp edges competing against each other. Thunder was seen in silence. The beginning was silent for a moment. The smile on his lips disappeared, and he said, "Do you know where this place is?" "Please enlighten me," Lin Sun said. The beginning said, "This is a corner of the forbidden land for life." "The forbidden land for life?" Lin Sun was surprised. "Yes, those who are born with life can be called life. In the eyes of cultivators like us, the myriad of living beings in the myriad of worlds, regardless of whether it's plants, beasts, evil spirits, demons, or the innumerable races, are all living beings in the end." The beginning said, "But it is impossible for powerful figures like Boundless Realm to create life. So, where do you think life comes from?" In the past, Lin Sun would definitely answer that the original life was bred by chaos. The chaos separated heaven and earth, so all things had spirits, and they developed spiritual intelligence in a great way. Then, after reproduction and transformation, they turned into all kinds of races in the world. But now Lin Sun was stunned. If chaos gave birth to life, how did it give birth to it? The beginning was obviously asking about the origin of life. He wanted to know what kind of power of the great Tao of chaos had created it. In the eyes of our generation, the great ways of fate and cause and effect are supreme. But almost no one can touch the essence and origin of life. The beginning said frankly, including me, "I also don't know much about it and can't see the mystery. But since I came to this forbidden land for life, I finally found some mysteries related to the origin of life." As he said, the beginning pointed to the countless flame balls in the nearby world and said, "Look, these are all the talents born here. Every day, every moment, new talents are born, and some talents disappear. It's very wonderful." Lin Sun looked around and found that the burning flame balls, like hundreds of millions of stars, suddenly became different. Talent. It was an inborn power. It could be awakened from the bloodline, condensed from the soul, or born from any part of the body. For example, some races were born with 2 wings and could travel between heaven and earth since they were born. Some races were born with only 1 vertical eye, but they had strange magic. And powerful creatures such as immortal phoenix, black tortoise, white tiger, and true dragon were born with all kinds of inborn talents. The existence of talent made the life in the world become diverse. But if you traced back to the origin, all talents were born in life. But now, there were countless talents floating between heaven and earth. The number was so great that Lin Sun couldn't identify the specific number at a glance. Moreover, as he observed, he could see that many fireballs were disappearing and many new fireballs were being born. Birth and death, the cycle was endless. Talent is the innate strength of life. However, you are able to see the birth and disappearance of countless innate strengths in this place. The reason for this is that the world here is filled with energy that can nurture and create innate strengths. This energy is definitely related to the secrets of life. The beginning said leisurely, "So, you think that this is the forbidden land for life?" Lin Sun asked, "No, this should be just a corner of the forbidden land for life." Speaking of this, the beginning, his eyes showed a trace of strangeness. "My little friend, do you know where the corner of the forbidden land for life we are in now is?" Lin Sun said, "Since you asked this, you must think that I should have heard of such a place long ago. If so, is it in the realm of wonders?" The beginning couldn't help laughing. Yes, but Lin Sun's heart was unable to calm down. The ruins of wonders were divided into 3 parts, and they were the realm of spirits, the realm of wonders, and the realm of wonders. On the other hand, the realm of wonders was regarded as the most forbidden place in the ruins of wonders. But according to the information Lin Sun knew, since ancient times until now, no one dared to step into it rashly because it was extremely dangerous, and anyone who entered would definitely die. It was precisely because they sensed such great danger that supreme figures like Chun Shi, the master of the heart core, and golden cicada would lie dormant in the realm of wonders. So, Lin Sun's previous guesses were merely guesses. But the beginning said that the world behind the door of eternity was actually within the realm of wonders. How could Lin Sun not be shocked and surprised? Are you surprised? That's because you haven't truly arrived at the realm of wonders to sense the aura that belongs to the forbidden land of wonders. The beginning smiled. If you have the chance to leave this place this time, then you can go and sense it. The implication was that if Lin Sun couldn't leave, then there was no need to talk about all of this. Lin Sun said, "You're just a Dharma manifestation, yet you're so confident that you can keep me here. If I'm not wrong, then it's probably related to my talent, right?" "Yes." The beginning's eyes were clear and calm as he said frankly, "The purpose of your coming here is naturally to investigate the origin of the Grand Devourer of the Abyss in order to resolve this hidden danger. And I just happen to know where the flaw of the Grand Devourer of the Abyss is." Lin Sun's pupils narrowed slightly, and he said, "Please enlighten me." The beginning thought for a moment and said, "This has to start from the treasure, the boat of eternity. A long time ago, when I entered the ruins of wonders for the first time, I obtained many unimaginable fortunes, and the most miraculous of them all was the boat of eternity." His clear eyes were suffused with recollection. "At that time, I lingered in the realm of wonders for a long time. Because I sensed the danger of the forbidden land of wonders, I knew that if I went to investigate, only death would await me, so I didn't dare to rashly go there. But I wasn't willing to stop here, so I decided to give it a try with the method of doppelgangers. In merely a year, I condensed 3,000 doppelgangers, and each doppelganger went to explore the forbidden land of wonders in a different way. But without exception, those doppelgangers didn't come back. Come to think of it, they should have suffered a calamity and disappeared. But I wasn't willing to give up. In the next 100,000 years, I condensed a doppelganger and went to the forbidden land of wonders to investigate every 10 years. Speaking of this, the beginning was full of emotion. Every time I tried, it was a failure. And when the countless failures piled up, it was a huge blow to me. After a pause, he smiled again. Fortunately, after 10,000 years of trying, things finally took a turn for the better. Chapter 3271. 100,000 years of attempts, 100,000 years of failure, had finally been exchanged for a glimmer of hope. Tai Chu's words seemed casual, but just thinking about it made people shiver. How much willpower and perseverance did he have to persevere for 100,000 years? The countless failures had not shaken him in the slightest. It would be terrifying to fight against such a character. However, absolute beginning continued. On that day, I was deducing the Grand Tao when I suddenly sensed something in my heart. When I raised my head to look towards the forbidden area of profundity, I saw a bronze coffin that was suffused with the aura of chaos flash out. It was naturally the eternal vessel, although I didn't know how miraculous it was at that time. I'm sure that it was a fortune that came from the forbidden zone of life. If there's no mishap, this treasure will be in my hand as soon as it flies out. In just 2 hours, I saw through the secrets of this treasure's star chart, condensed the gate of eternity, and arrived in this world. At that time, I was just like you. I knew nothing about this world, but my heart was filled with excitement and joy. I thought that the secrets hidden in this place might allow me to achieve the ultimate breakthrough on my boundless path towards the Tao, and I might be able to step onto a higher path. When he spoke up to here, absolute beginning let out a long sigh. But later on, I noticed that this place is merely a corner of the forbidden area of profundity, and the profundities related to the origin and essence of life are extremely limited. Moreover, it can only be explored from the innate energy that was born in this expanse of the heavens and the earth. Lin Sun raised his eyebrows and asked, "Did you discover the talent of devouring abyss from here?" "Little friend, don't be anxious." The beginning smiled, looking at the billions of burning flames. "At that time, I spent more than 1,000 years to sense and understand those talents one by one. First, I wanted to know the secrets of life. Second, I was curious to see if there was the strongest talent in this world. Until one day, when I was comprehending one of the talents, a variable suddenly appeared. Speaking of this, the beginning looked at Lin Sun again. My little friend, do you want to have a look? Lin Sun nodded. Absolute beginning. Raised his hand, and a curtain of light emerged. In the light screen, a cluster of flames that was in the process of being born appeared. They seemed to have emerged from nothingness, bringing with them wisps of the aura of primal chaos. They had yet to truly take shape. But right at this moment, an unexpected event occurred. One of the balls of flames suddenly trembled, and then a profound and unfathomable fluctuation of life surged into appearance. Then, this ball of flame burst out with an unbelievable devouring power, and it devoured all the other innate abilities around it. Absolute Beginning's surprised voice could be heard from the light screen. Apparently, Absolute Beginning had also noticed this anomaly at that time. However, when Absolute Beginning approached, the myriad of flaming raindrops that were scattered throughout the heavens and the earth seemed as if they'd been drawn over, and they charged madly towards Absolute Beginning. The commotion was too big, catching even Absolute Beginning off guard. At that moment, the ball of fire that radiated with the aura of the rhythm of life turned into a ray of light and fled from this world. The screen of light dissipated. Absolute Beginning, who was sitting cross-legged on the platform, said, "Do you see that? A newly born talent has miraculously gained life energy. How unbelievable is that?" Lin Sun couldn't calm down either. He vaguely guessed something, but he wasn't sure. Absolute Beginning's eyes were filled with a trace of regret. When I chased after it, that talent with life energy had already escaped with the help of the eternal arc outside the gate of eternity. Hearing this, Lin Sun couldn't help but ask, "You mean the Eternal Night Divine Emperor was transformed from that talent that was born in this world?" Absolute Beginning said, "That's right. In the years that followed, I sent many people to investigate the Eternal Arkansas. Finally, I learned that that talent had already embarked on the path of Tao and called itself the Eternal Night Divine Emperor. She was actually also seeking a way to break through. Just thinking about it is incredible. It's a pity that my subordinates were all useless and couldn't capture the Eternal Night Divine Emperor. Later, I found out that this woman was born with the ability to control fate and the power of karma. This should be the innate ability she had mastered when this world was born. And a person with such talent is indeed too difficult to deal with. A long time ago, with the power of the primordial bell, I suddenly launched a murderous attack. I thought that I could capture that woman in this way, but who would have thought that she still escaped?" Hearing this, Lin Sun remembered that when the Eternal Night Divine Emperor went to the divine city of fortune, he encountered a great silent fate. At that time, the primordial bell descended and seriously injured him, so that in the end, he had to hide in the flowing light forbidden area and finally chose to reincarnate. Obviously, this was what Absolute Beginning was talking about at this moment. But Lin Sun couldn't calm down. He finally understood why Xia Ji said that in the memory of the Eternal Night Divine Emperor, there was nothing about the Eternal Gate, as if it had been erased. The reason was that the moment the Eternal Night Divine Emperor was born, he had already escaped from that world. So how could he leave any impression? Of course, the most shocking thing to Lin Sun was that the origin of the Eternal Night Divine Emperor was transformed from a talent energy, which was completely unexpected to Lin Sun. And inferring in this way, as the reincarnation of the Eternal Night Divine Emperor, the origin of Xia Ji's life was also in this world. This world was located in the Forbidden Land of Wonders, and the Forbidden Land of Wonders was located in the Ruins of Wonders, which was equivalent to saying that Xia Ji came out from the Ruins of Wonders. My little friend, your state of mind is not stable, so you probably don't know that the truth will be so bizarre, right? On the Taoist platform, Absolute Beginning asked softly. Lin Sun looked at the clear and calm eyes of the other party, and his heart shuddered. He immediately calmed down and said, "I really didn't expect that the talent energy born in this world could have life. Moreover, my talent energy has such a great relationship with the other party." Thinking about it, Although he was born with the talent of devouring the abyss, the source of this talent energy didn't come from his mother Luo Qingxuan, nor from his maternal great-grandfather Luo Tongtian, but from the eternal night divine emperor who possessed the treasure of eternal ship. And the eternal night divine emperor was a talented creature born in this world. This is the cause and effect. The beginning smiled. Although the eternal night divine emperor escaped from this world and even took the boat of eternity with her, I thought it was a good thing for me. A good thing? Lin Sun frowned. Absolute Beginning said, an innate gift that can create life, to me, is the same as me seeing a possibility. That is, in this world, there exists a secret that can create life. After the eternal night divine emperor escaped, I was exploring this matter. It took me about 800 years to finally find some mysteries and finally found the origin power that gave birth to the eternal night divine emperor. The Beginning looked at Lin Sun with a subtle look in his eyes. In other words, this kind of origin power is the root of the talent of devouring the abyss. This undoubtedly told Lin Sun that he had insight into the essence and mystery of the devouring the abyss, which was a great threat to Lin Sun. After all, from the time he was born, the talent of devouring the abyss had affected the trajectory of his life. After a moment of silence, Lin Sun asked, "You left your will here to wait for me, not just to wait for me to come here one day and tell me this, right?" "Of course not." The Beginning smiled. "In fact, the reason why I waited here was to wait for the eternal night divine emperor, not for you. But even I didn't expect that the Lotus Beauty was waiting for would be you, a young man with the talent of devouring the abyss. In less than 1,000 years, you rose from the insignificant Xiao Empire, went all the way to the eternal world from the starry ancient path, experienced countless trials in the ultimate ruins, the ruins of fate and the Kunlun ruins, and finally came to the ruins of wonderful Tao. Do you know? I've seen boundless upheaval, blood, variables, and calamities on this path of cultivation that you've taken. If it's an ordinary cultivator, then they would have probably died countless times by now. However, you've been able to repeatedly turn danger into safety and create unexpected miracles and magnificent feats. Even I have to admit that you're indeed an unprecedented variable." The Beginning's tone was full of emotion. He had seen all kinds of amazing people in his life, but Lin Sun was the only one that he noticed a completely different variable. Lin Sun looked calm. It was not surprising that the Beginning could know his past. After saying so much, "What on earth do you want to do?" Lin Sun asked. "It's very simple. I want to get something from you, such as the eternal boat, the talent of devouring the abyss, nirvana, and the girl named Xia Ji." The Beginning looked calm. Lin Sun's eyes were slightly cold, and he said, "You really want a lot." Tai Chu casually smiled and said, "I know you won't agree to it. But just like what you said in the beginning, at this point, it's pointless to be secretive. What I'm talking about now is exactly what I want. If you agree, I can guarantee that I will never regard you as an enemy again. Do you think I will agree?" Lin Sun asked. Absolute Beginning smiled. "I won't." Lin Sun's mind, expression, and eyes all became calmer. "Then why do you ask when you know the answer?" The Beginning was still sitting cross-legged on the platform, with a casual manner and a calm tone. "I just want to see if you and Luo Tongtian will make the same choice. Now it seems that you are really a family." The words were so shocking that Lin Sun's heart suddenly trembled, and he said, "My great-grandfather was taken away by you?" The Beginning nodded, "Yes." A chill appeared in Lin Sun's eyes. "You killed him?" The Beginning nodded again, "Yes." Then he said patiently, "I wanted to see the devouring the abyss from him and then take back the eternal boat, but I didn't expect that he would choose to die, just like you now." He had always been very calm and casual, even when he talked about killing Luo Tongtian. But his casualness was a kind of extreme indifference and coldness. He was like the supreme dominator of life and death, who regarded all living beings as nonentities and didn't care at all. Chapter 3272. In the beginning, Lin Sun still respected Tai Chu. Even though they were enemies on the Great Way, Tai Chu's demeanor and bearing were rare in the world. But at this moment, When he learned that Luo Tongtian was killed by Tai Chu, Lin Sun couldn't help but feel hatred and disgust. There was no doubt that Tai Chu was an extremely cold and indifferent opponent. It was also undeniable that his cultivation was so strong that he disdained to hide anything he did or said, just like his performance at this moment. It seems that we are destined to be enemies. Lin Sun took a deep breath and said calmly, "No more nonsense. Let's fight." Tai Chu was a little regretful and said, "In this case, I'm afraid you will never have a chance to go to the mysterious god realm to compete with me." Lin Sun looked at him quietly and didn't speak anymore. However, his aura had already been circulated to its peak. Seeing this, Tai Chu suddenly smiled and stood up from the platform, saying, "As you said, I'm just a manifestation of willpower. Since I want to deal with you, I should start from your most fatal weakness." As he said, his body suddenly shone, and his long figure seemed to become infinitely tall. An indescribable, horrible breath spread out. Boom! The hundreds of millions of flame light balls floating in the void nearby shook violently, as if they surrendered. The power of rules covering this world seemed to be drawn out all at once, and all gathered in the palm of Tai Chu's right hand. An indescribable feeling of palpitation surged through Lin Sun's body, and the talent power located in his heart was also inexplicably restless at this moment, like a beast that had noticed the coming danger. The origin of chaos in this world gave birth to the devouring abyss, and I have already mastered the origin of chaos here. As long as I think about it, I can suppress and control any talent power born in this world. In a leisurely and calm voice, Tai Chu suddenly grasped the air with his right hand. "This includes your devouring abyss, of course." Boom! Even though Lin Sun had made all the preparations to resist and resist, he still felt the heavy pressure when this grasping force shrouded him. Without the slightest hesitation, Chun Shi flicked his sleeve, causing boundless light of the Tao to surge into appearance and forcefully block the might of this claw. Their attacks collided, and this expanse of the heavens and the earth shook while the nearby space rumbled and collapsed towards the surroundings. In the billowing airwaves, although Lin Sun blocked the blow, he only felt a sharp pain in his heart, and the talent power hidden in it was like being grabbed by a big hand and pulled out fiercely. The pain was so intense that he felt as if his heart and liver were being ripped out. Lin Sun's face changed slightly. There was no doubt that this grasping force was aimed at his talent. Most horrifying of it all was that no matter how he circulated his cultivation, he was actually unable to suppress it. The reason was that the grand devouring abyss wasn't resisting it, and it seemed to urgently want to leave his body. "Young friend, you won't be able to resist it. To your grand devouring abyss. The power I wield is like its mother nest and essence. No matter how much you try to suppress it, it will still leave you. Your great-grandfather, Luo Tongtian, lost his innate talent here. Now, it's your turn." Lin Sun's face was pale, and a chill ran down his spine. He was trying his best to suppress his talent power, but as time went by, the talent power hidden in his heart showed a faint sign of being out of control. Once it was taken away, it would definitely be a fatal blow to Lin Sun's cultivation. After all, his cultivation had long been integrated into the profound meaning of the grand devouring abyss. It had become a part of his cultivation. If it was taken away now, his cultivation would be seriously damaged. In this case, even if he had the possibility to leave here alive this time, he couldn't make up for it all. This is the cause and effect. What's more, the grand devouring abyss was born with you and is the origin of your Tao. If the origin is gone, there is no Tao. Tai Chu said softly. This was not complacency, but still as casual and indifferent as when they were chatting before. But the more it was like this, the more terrible Tai Chu's mind was. Your master Pewdie probably didn't expect that the variable he had been waiting for would be destroyed by the talent of the grand devouring abyss. If he knew this, he would probably give up the idea of playing chess with me, wouldn't he? Tai Chu said softly. He didn't take advantage of this moment to make another move. After all, he was just a manifestation of willpower. He would never give Lin Sun any chance to defeat him before he took away the talent of the grand devouring abyss. Puff! Suddenly, Lin Sun coughed up a mouthful of blood, and his face turned pale. His vital energy surged and roared, and the aura he revealed was boundlessly terrifying. Even the beginning couldn't help but be moved. I never expected that your current cultivation has actually far surpassed a figure like the boundless Tao Lord, and it's even to the extent that you faintly possess the might of the boundless Dominator. Taichu was surprised. He didn't expect that Lin Sun's cultivation had advanced to such a level just after he arrived at the Headstream world, the fourth heaven of the spirit's realm. But immediately Taichu smiled. In his eyes, although Lin Sun's breath was extremely powerful, it was obvious that he couldn't suppress the talent power in his body. Whether it's your master, Qin Shi, or Golden Cicada, they're all waiting for you, the variable. They also know that my original body, trapped in the sword lock, is also waiting for you. But they probably didn't expect that you, the variable, would encounter an accident in front of me before you arrived at the mysterious God realm. Taichu spoke as if he was chatting with an old friend. But don't worry, little friend. I only want those things I said before, and I won't harm your life. After all, in these countless years, there are too few people who can impress me, and your temperament and character are undoubtedly what I admire the most. Maybe when my original body goes to the mysterious, forbidden land in the future, I will also take you with me. In this way, the road to the Great Tao won't be too lonely. Just speaking of this, Lin Sun in the distance suddenly raised his eyes and looked at him from afar. A touch of mockery appeared on his pale face. Do you really think you've won? Taichu was slightly startled and said, So, little friend, do you think you still have a chance to struggle? Struggle? Lin Sun laughed and suddenly stepped into the void, walking towards Taichu. At this time, his violent chi produced a kind of amazing change, like a phoenix reborn in the fire, or a silkworm breaking out of the cocoon and becoming a butterfly. In Taichu's perception, the talent of devouring abyss hidden in Lin Sun's body, which was being seized by him, also transformed at this moment and became completely different from before. But when Taichu wanted to further sense it, he lost the sense of the devouring abyss. This sudden scene took him by surprise. But before Taichu could react, Lin Sun had already rushed to him. Boom! He raised his fist and smashed it. It was simple and casual, but it was full of mysterious and unpredictable supreme power. Taichu's sleeves fluttered, and he collided with it. Boom! The next moment, Taichu was hit hard. When he flew out, the Taoist light around his body was violently tumbling, and there was a sign that it was about to collapse. Go! Taichu stretched out his hand and pointed. Hundreds of millions of flame light balls floating in the void nearby suddenly whistled up and turned into a vast and endless sea of fire, covering Lin Sun. Boom! Lin Sun's figure spread out, and the fire all over the sky was swallowed up by his figure like all streams returning to their origin. These were all talents born in this place, but now they were all swept away by Lin Sun like a whale swallowing the sea. That scene made Taichu's eyes narrow. Now, do you still think my master's efforts are in vain? Lin Sun said calmly. Taichu sighed softly. It's really an unprecedented variable. If I'm right, the reason why you can keep the devouring abyss and make it transform should be related to the power of nirvana, right? Yes. Lin Sun took another step and rushed to Taichu. But Taichu waved his hand and said, There's no need to fight anymore. I will disappear here. But Lin Sun didn't stop, and he smashed his fist through the air. This surprised Taichu, and he was a little stunned. Boom! His whole body was blown out again, and his hair was disheveled. He was extremely embarrassed, and his figure showed signs of collapse, which was the rapid loss of his willpower. Weren't you very happy just now? Now it's my turn to be happy. Lin Sun said leisurely. Taichu's lips twitched slightly, and he shook his head and sighed. It's just a spiritual manifestation. Why do you care so much? Boom! The next moment, he was blown out again, and his body became completely illusory and dissipated. It's not that I care, but you make me very uncomfortable. I have to vent my anger first. Lin Sun said casually. Haha, interesting. But Taichu suddenly looked up to the sky and laughed. Maybe what I have been waiting for is a variable like you. My little friend, when you arrive at the mysterious God realm, I will also vent my anger. His voice was still echoing, and his figure had completely dissipated and disappeared. Lin Sun just raised his fist and felt a little regretful. Although this guy's spiritual manifestation was strong, it was a little weak. Lin Sun took a long breath and looked around. Although he had swallowed up the vast and boundless fireballs, there were already many fireballs appearing little by little in the void now. Lin Sun sensed that the flames swallowed by him had all turned into various kinds of talents in his body, densely packed and innumerable. When Lin Sun ran his cultivation, these talents were refined one by one and turned into strands of pure and translucent origin of chaos, which integrated into Lin Sun's own cultivation. Suddenly, all kinds of indescribable and wonderful insights came to Lin Sun's mind. Taichu didn't lie to me. The origin of chaos in this world can indeed breed and create talents, just like the mother of all talents in the world. Taichu used this kind of power before and almost took away my talent after a long time, Lin Sun murmured. This kind of origin of chaos could be called Endao spirit. It was because of the origin of Endao spirit that life would become different and all kinds of lives in the world would have different talents. It was also at this moment that Lin Sun understood why Taichu regarded this world as a corner of the life forbidden zone. Because the origin of Endao spirit did involve some of the mysteries of life. Chapter 3273. While thinking, Lin Sun strolled to the platform where Taichu sat before. Under the divine aura of the Grand Tao at the absolute beginning of the world, this Tao platform had already become miraculous and extraordinary. Not to mention ordinary cultivators, even a boundless realm figure that meditated on it would be able to sense some unique and miraculous Tao marks. When Absolute Beginning entered this place, he had comprehended so many innate powers that he understood a part of the mysteries of the origin of life. I wonder how powerful he is now. Lin Sun thought for a while and waved his sleeves. The Tao platform, left by Absolute Beginning in front of him, instantly turned into ashes and vanished from the world. Then Lin Sun turned around and left. Possessing the boat of eternity was like possessing the key to opening the door of eternity, and it would allow him to enter this place at any time in the future. So, he wasn't willing to waste his time here. Profound God domain. In that chaotic world, laughter suddenly resounded from the depths of the ground. At first, it was so soft that it couldn't be heard, but later on, the laughter grew louder and louder, shaking the entire world to the point of trembling violently and causing chaos to roil. Black Crow, who was perching on a withered tree, shuddered. What was wrong with the cult master now? Ever since he learned that Lin Sun had arrived at the ruins of Tao, Black Crow had noticed that his hierarch had acted abnormally more than once. This time, it was clearly a bit more intense because the laughter was just too loud, shaking Black Crow to the point where he had no choice but to circulate his cultivation with all his might in order to avoid being injured. Little Crow, Lin Sun really didn't disappoint me. Just you wait. The moment he arrives at the profound God domain will be the moment I escape from this swordlock. Ha ha! The Primordium Sovereign's voice rang out, his laughter echoing into the clouds, causing the world to dim and the mountains and rivers to tremble. Black Crow was stunned for a moment before he became excited. Profundity Divine Territory, Traceback World. In a quiet courtyard in Nank City. When Su Wanjun saw Lin Sun walking out of the Eternal Gates safely, she heaved a sigh of relief and asked with a smile, "How was it?" Summer Solstice also looked over with her clear eyes. "It's going well." When Lin Sun walked out, the Eternal Gate disappeared. "Let's have a seat." Su Wanjun pointed to the wrought-tan chairs in the courtyard and took the lead to sit on one of them. Then she took out a pot of wine and handed it to Lin. Lin Sun reclined in the wrought-tan chair and drank a mouthful of wine. Then he told his experience in the Eternal Gate without hiding anything. On the other hand, the world behind the door of eternity was called the spirit in Tao world. When Su Wanjun learned that Xia Ji's previous incarnation, the Eternal Night Emperor, was born in the spiritual realm, she couldn't help but glance at Xia Ji, who was sitting next to Lin Sun. Even she was extremely shocked. She couldn't imagine that innate power could actually possess life. But Xia Ji's beautiful face was full of tranquility, as if she was listening to something that had nothing to do with her. In fact, she had long separated herself from the Eternal Night Divine Emperor. She had never been affected by the Eternal Night Divine Emperor, so naturally, she would not have any heartfelt feelings. The backup plan that the beginning left behind has failed, and you no longer have to worry about your talent affecting yourself. This is already an extremely good thing. Su Wanjun said. However, his main body is still here. If I'm not wrong, his main body is probably already aware of what happened in the spiritual realm. Lin Sun nodded. Of course. Even though he'd only come into contact with the will of the beginning, his extremely indifferent and composed spirit still left an extremely deep impression on Lin Sun. Senior, if there's a path that's higher than the eternal path in this world, then in my opinion, it's definitely to explore the essence of life. Or perhaps it can be called the Tao of life. Lin Sun said in a light voice, if the beginning didn't lie, then in his opinion, the realm of profundity is the forbidden area for life, and the secrets related to the origin of life are hidden within it. Just like the spiritual realm, it's located within the realm of profundity. The Tao of life, Su Wanjun fell in a deep thought, and she muttered after a long time, if that's the case, then did he choose to reincarnate and cultivate again in samsara for the sake of exploring this Tao? It should be so. Lin Sun pondered and said, samsara is a taboo way of reincarnation, which involves the change and reincarnation of life. Since the senior swordsman could cultivate again in samsara, it naturally means that he has touched some mysteries related to the Tao of life. After a pause, he continued, what's more, the beginning can understand some mysteries in the Tao of life, and the sword lock left by the senior swordsman can trap the beginning until now. This has proved that the senior swordsman's understanding of the Tao of life is not weaker than the beginning. Yes, Su Wanjun suddenly realized something and said, young brother, according to what you've said, the rebirth energy you've grasped isn't simple as well. Forget it. Let's not talk about this. In my opinion, the life Tao is too ethereal in the end, and it isn't worth wasting my time on it. It wasn't that she wasn't curious, but she knew that it was related to the core secret of Lin Sun's Tao, so it wasn't suitable to discuss it. But Lin Sun obviously didn't care, and said with a smile, now I finally understand why my master, Golden Cicada, and Chen Shi all regard me as a variable. The reason, as you said, is related to the power of nirvana. There was a subtle emotion in his eyes. Nirvana is a kind of power that can reshape and transform life. Possessing this power is like mastering the means of Phoenix's rebirth in fire and silkworm's metamorphosis into a butterfly. What it achieves is the change of life. And for those who try to seek the Tao of life, the existence of the power of nirvana is naturally extremely amazing. In the final analysis, the essence of the Tao of nirvana lies in the word change. It can reshape the great way and transform life. And I, who possess this power, become a variable. Yes, at this moment, Lin Sun thoroughly understood the meaning of the power of nirvana and why he was regarded as a variable. Among the 50 great ways and 49 heavenly evolutions, one had escaped. A long time ago, when he became the 50th successor of the mind formula, he was regarded as the one who escaped by his senior brothers and sisters. Until he mastered the Nirvana Upanishad in the Nirvana Carefree Heaven, his one had become a variable that could break everything in the past and subvert the world's cognition. But before, Lin Sun never thought that the Nirvana ultimacy would be related to the Tao of life, so he didn't understand why he became a variable. But now he understood. He also remembered many things in the past. For example, he had reshaped the life of his disciple Tang Jiang with the Nirvana ultimacy and made him reborn. He had also helped his senior brother revive in the sea of destiny. Even the supreme great ways such as fate, time, the five sequences of the ultimate, and the power of creation could all be integrated into the Tao of nirvana. In the past, Lin Sun didn't think about this at all. But now he suddenly realized that it was because the nirvana ultimacy was related to the Tao of life that it could possess such incredible power. Su Wanjun was silent for a moment and said, "My young friend, how do you see yourself as a variable?" Lin Sun took a sip of wine and said, "To tell you the truth, I've always thought that it's because I'm strong enough that I become a variable. It's not because I become a variable that my cultivation path becomes stronger. As for how I see myself as a variable, it's very simple. I don't care about it at all." "You don't care about it?" "Yes, I don't care about it." Lin Sun nodded. Su Wanjun couldn't help feeling a little surprised. In her opinion, Lin Sun would either feel great pressure or be happy and excited about becoming an unprecedented variable. But she didn't expect that Lin Sun didn't take this problem seriously. Whether it's the devouring abyss or the power of nirvana, they're all part of the Tao path for me. But my Tao path is not determined by these powers. Lin Sun said softly, "Just like my life, I can control it by myself. To put it bluntly, if one day the power of devouring abyss and nirvana becomes a burden on my cultivation, I will abandon them without hesitation." Su Wanjun was shocked and said, "It's really rare for you to look at your own Tao path in this way." Lin Sun stretched himself in a rattan chair and then stood up, saying, "Senior, I'm going to meditate and cultivate first." Su Wanjun smiled and said, "Go ahead." In the room, Lin Sun sat cross-legged. In the spiritual and Tao realm, he used the power of nirvana to reshape the devouring abyss in one fell swoop during the confrontation with Tai Chu, so that this talent also transformed and saved him from danger. At this moment, as Lin Sun meditated, he found that his talent had completely left the position of the heart vein and integrated into his Tao, like snow melting into water. This meant that from now onward, his natural talent of devouring the abyss wasn't isolated from the path towards the Tao any longer, and it was like his cultivation, mental state, and energy of the grand Tao. It had completely fused into his attainments in the Tao. Because of this, in the spiritual and Tao realm at that time, even if Tai Chu's Dharma form controlled the power of the spiritual and Tao origin, it could no longer have any influence and control on the talent he possessed. In the past, I could only achieve all Tao return to one, all Dharma return to one, all things return to one, but only the talent power didn't really integrate into the Tao path. Although the experience this time was dangerous, it was also a blessing in disguise, and I completely integrated the talent into the Tao path in one fell swoop. Lin Sun could clearly feel that as he integrated the talent power, his cultivation was actually further improved. Soon, only one step away from the great perfection of boundless realm. And at that time, my eternal Tao path can be called the ultimate perfection. At this moment, a strong premonition surged in Lin Sun's heart. His Tao path was like a teacup that was about to be filled with water, and he could already feel the aura and signs of approaching perfection. Chapter 3274. As he meditated and cultivated, numerous unbelievable scenes appeared on Lin Sun's body. The most striking amongst them were the four great Tao manifestations related to the four ruins of Tao, and they respectively transformed into the ruins of End, Kunlun ruins, ruins of creation, and ruins of Tao. Amongst them, the ruins of Tao was the most blurry, and it was far from being as clear and solid as the other three ruins of Tao. However, Lin Sun could sense that as he comprehended and grasped some of the profundities of the spirit bestowal source, the aura that belonged to the ruins of Tao had condensed greatly. The five sequences of the ruins of End, the laws of creation of the ruins of creation, and the laws of destiny of Kunlun ruins. Then, would the quintessence of the ruins of Tao be related to the laws of life? Lin Sun meditated as he deduced, and he was completely unaware of the passage of time. Half a month later, Lin Sun woke up from his meditation. His entire aura revealed a simple and natural feeling, and there wasn't a trace of sharpness in it at all. It was ethereal like the clouds and the horizon, yet inconspicuous like the dust in the world. The body fused with the Tao, and the Tao was natural. Just as the embodiment scripture said, there was nothing he couldn't accomplish. In other words, Lin Sun could transform into the heavens, the earth, the sun, and the moon, or he could transform into an ant. Everything in the world and the Tao of the past and present could be transformed into his body. This was an indescribably wonderful charm of the great Tao. When an ordinary person saw Lin Sun, they would feel that he was ordinary, like one of the myriad of living beings without any characteristics. However, if it was a supreme figure that was on par with Lin Sun on the path of the Tao, they would definitely be able to sense this charm that was suffused with Lin Sun's body. The body and mind transform into the Tao, and the Tao transform into nature. This can be said to be great freedom. At this moment, Lin Sun finally understood why the boundless realm was called great freedom. After carefully comprehending his own cultivation for a while, he stood up and walked out of the room. In the courtyard, Su Wanjun, who was dressed in a red dress, was brewing tea while Xie sat on a wrought tan chair at the side and sipped tea. The atmosphere was tranquil, and the scene was tranquil and beautiful. Lin Sun's appearance didn't break this tranquil atmosphere at all, and he naturally merged into this world. When he arrived by Su Wanjun's side, the latter's hand that was holding the teacup trembled slightly, and only then did she realize that Lin Sun had arrived without her noticing. She was stunned for a moment and looked up at Lin Sun, saying, "My little friend, your cultivation is getting more and more mysterious." Lin Sun smiled. "Half a month of quiet cultivation, I just felt a little bit, not much progress." "Lin Sun, when are we leaving this world?" Xie asked. "You can leave now," Lin Sun said casually. He and Xie had already comprehended the golden millet pillow of the heavenly Tao of this world, which meant that they had the means to leave this world. "But before we leave, we have to do something," said Lin Sun. "What is it?" This time, it was Su Wanjun's turn to be surprised. Lin Sun said with a smile, "Go and clean up those messengers of destiny scattered in this world, so that they won't disturb your cultivation after Xie and I leave." Su Wanjun felt warmth in her heart. It had been a long time since she felt such concern from a friend. On the same day, Lin and Xie took action. In less than 7 days, the remaining 10 or so destiny messengers of the Jin department were completely wiped out by Lin Sun. As soon as the news came out, the entire origin world was shaken. Lin Sun and Xie had already left the origin world through the gate of heaven. Before they parted, Su Wanjun gave Lin Sun a jar of sincerity brewed by the swordsman. Lin Sun originally wanted to leave the spiritual affinity and the 3-inch wooden sword to Su Wanjun, but when he thought that doing so might affect Su Wanjun's Taoist heart, he gave up in the end. In the end, Su Wanjun's obsession was too strong. She was probably aware of this problem, which was why she chose to stay in the origin world and wait for the swordsman who had reincarnated. The 5th heaven of the spirit's realm was called the evil source. This world was extremely mysterious. If human cultivators entered it, they would encounter all kinds of evil that targeted the human race. If living beings from other clans entered, they would encounter all sorts of evil things that targeted these living beings. If they wanted to leave, there was only one way, and that was to destroy the evil source. Before entering this world, Lin Sun and Xie had discussed that whoever left the evil source first would meet the other in the 6th heaven, the 1,000 tribulations world. The reason for this was that Lin Sun was a human, and Xie's origins were related to the talent she possessed in the spirit endowment world. She was an extremely unique life form. When the two of them entered the evil source, they would be completely separated. At the same time, the evil that they encountered in the evil source would be different as well. The evil source. Ripples appeared in space, and then Lin Sun's figure appeared out of thin air. The heavens and the earth were dark and gloomy, while demonic energy surged through the mountains and rivers. Snow-white skeletons could be seen all over the ground, and even the air was suffused with a pungent stench. Lin Sun frowned slightly and said, This world really is as bloody as the rumors say. Before he came here, he learned that when human cultivators entered the evil source, they would see a world where the human race was the target of plundering and enslavement. In this world, demons were revered while ghosts were the masters. The mountains and rivers were filled with terrifying beings that reigned supreme over the Grand Tao. The history and civilization of this world were written by demons, ghosts, and all the laws and rules of the world were created by them. On the other hand, the human race that resided throughout this world had become their prey and livestock. Some demons viewed humans as slaves, and they could order and enslave them at will. Some viewed humans as fish, and they ate their flesh raw, drank their blood when thirsty, and chewed their bones and sucked their marrow. Some viewed humans as medicinal herbs that were used to temper and improve their cultivation. The stronger a cultivator was, the more these demons would like them, and they viewed them as mortal cores. In short, humans were the most lowly beings in the evil source. In the eyes of the demons and ghosts of this world, there were livestock, slaves, medicinal herbs, and so on and so forth. Lin Sun was naturally aware that this was the torture that the evil source world placed on the human race. Just like how cultivators from other races would similarly suffer the torture of their race when they entered the evil source world. However, even though he was aware of it, when he appeared in this world and smelled the foul stench of blood in the heavens and the earth, the test still surged into Lin Sun's heart. This was a vast expanse of mountains and rivers. However, the air was actually filled with such a bloody aura. From this, one could imagine just how much slaughter there was in this world. On the other hand, the race that suffered the most deaths in this world was definitely the human race. The important matter at hand is to find the leader of all evil as soon as possible. Lin Sun pondered. If he wanted to leave this world, then he had to annihilate the leader of all evil. Only in that way would he be able to draw down the chaotic Tao fruit and enter the heaven entrance. Swoosh! In the next moment, Lin Sun flashed forward. After every single cultivator entered the evil source world, everything they encountered was different. Even if they were all humans, the dangers they encountered in the evil source world were different. Because of this, Lin Sun didn't have to worry about being attacked by other cultivators in the evil source world. He hadn't moved forward for long when Lin Sun suddenly stopped in midair. In his divine sense, he noticed a group of mountains in the distance. Baleful chi shot into the sky, and it dyed the clouds in the horizon pitch black. The dense stench of blood seemed like a volcanic eruption, and it ceaselessly spread out from the group of mountains and actually transformed into a bloody airflow. Lin Sun thought for a moment before he moved closer. He saw the group of mountains was covered in skeletons like a mountain range, and the skeletons were like a forest. Human heads were burnt into felt pieces, and human skin and flesh were rotten into mud and dust. Human tendons were wrapped around trees, and they were dry and shiny like silver. It really was a mountain of corpses and a sea of blood, and it really smelled horrible. Groups of small demons cut the flesh of the living into pieces, and numerous ghosts cooked the flesh of the humans. In the depths of the group of mountains were numerous cages, and thousands of humans of all ages were imprisoned there. All of them had numb expressions and empty eyes, and they just seemed like livestock in a pen. On the peak of one of these mountains was a luxurious and grand palace. There were graceful and beautiful female cultivators that had transformed into servants, and they served cooked food and fine wine to Qin Shi. The food was human blood, human flesh, and so on and so forth. Within the palace, a group of demon leaders were having a meal together, and they were chatting cheerfully and wittily. When he saw the scenes of demons killing and eating humans, Lin Sun couldn't restrain the rage in his heart. All living beings were equal. It was complete nonsense to Lin Sun. Firstly, he was a member of the human race. When he saw these scenes of humans being treated like livestock and being slaughtered at will, how could Lin Sun remain indifferent? The evil origin world, as expected of the source of all evil. Lin Sun muttered in his heart. From his point of view, everything in this world was an expanse of evil. There was no need to talk about why humans were allowed to eat livestock and why animals weren't allowed to eat humans. If one looked back into the history of the human race, it wasn't difficult to notice that no matter which era or which world it was, the human race had always been the weakest race during the primeval times. It was precisely the countless ancestors of the human race who'd shed their blood and worked hard to lead the human race step by step to keep pace with the other races in the universe. And they forged a glorious chapter that belonged to the human race. On the other hand, the human race had been reduced to livestock and medicine in the evil origin world. Under such circumstances, the human race would be no different from a whore in the mortal world if they were to consider hypocritical things like justice and equality. Suddenly, Lin Sun's pupils narrowed. He saw a little demon in the depths of the group of mountains grab a wailing little boy, and then it pressed the little boy down on the chopping board before it slashed down repeatedly with the bone blade in its hand. Bang! 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 In the blink of an eye, the little boy that was like a statue had been chopped into pieces by the little demon, and when his blood flowed out, the little demon even stretched out its scarlet-red head and swallowed it. The little demon revealed a comfortable and intoxicated expression as it praised. I didn't raise this little fellow for 5 years in vain. The flesh of this little fellow is still the most delicious. As it spoke, it swiftly sifted through the human flesh on the chopping board while muttering, "The internal organs can be boiled in a soup, a pair of arms can be roasted, and this little head can be made into a top-notch dish." In a cage nearby, a young human couple lay paralyzed on the ground, and they were sobbing. The person that had been chopped into pieces was their child. The expressions of the others in the cage were still numb, and they'd long since become indifferent to this. They were like livestock that had been reared in captivity for many years, and they'd long since gotten used to the reality of being slaughtered at will. Who asked? What if they were humans? They were born with misfortune. Chapter 3275. Lin Sun's eyes turned cold quietly. He took a stride forward and swiftly appeared in the sky above the group of mountains, and then he looked down from above. At this moment, no matter if they were feasting on meat, drinking wine, or cooking human flesh, the bodies of the 13,600 little demons that were scattered in the mountains had silently transformed into ashes that rustled and scattered all over the ground. The stench of blood that filled the air instantly evaporated into nothingness. Who? A roar came from a palace at the peak of a mountain. Immediately after, a huge blood-colored demon figure of thousands of feet soared into the sky. He had 9 lion heads that were as huge as houses, and his body was like a human, covered with blazing rainbow fur. Scarlet light rain fell from his body like a waterfall, and his aura was extremely terrifying. This 9-headed lion demon was actually not weaker than a boundless realm figure, a boundless realm existence of the human race. The 9-headed lion demon was stunned, as if in disbelief. This is a rare, peerless medicine. Suddenly, a cold voice sounded, filled with surprise. A black cloud rolled, and a huge green snake appeared out of thin air, a pair of brown eyes flashing with a cold and cruel luster. The huge green snake's body was like a continuous mountain range, covered with strange and unpredictable rule power. To be able to cultivate to the boundless realm, this human is probably not simple. Brothers, be careful. A giant white bone bird came across the sky. Its huge skeleton was as long as 10,000 feet, and its pair of eyes were burning with green flames. As soon as these 3 boundless realm demons appeared, heaven and earth trembled, the wind and clouds changed, and the ferocious power was extremely terrifying. They looked at Lin Sun with solemn and scorching eyes. It was as if they saw a peerless medicine come to their door. They couldn't believe it. Originally, Lin Sun still had a lot of questions to ask, but now, he suddenly didn't want to say anything. Unable to calm down, he should kill quickly. Lin Sun raised his eyes and looked at the 9-headed lion demon that appeared first. At that moment, the 9-headed lion demon inexplicably panicked, feeling a fatal threat coming head-on. Roar! He let out a deafening roar and attacked first without hesitation. The 9 heads that were as huge as houses opened their mouths, spewing out billions of torrents of light, shrouding Lin Sun. Go! Lin Sun pinched his fingers, and a sword chi rose into the air. At that instant, it simply seemed like the most brilliant wisp of sharp light in the world had appeared abruptly. It caused the heavens and the earth to dim down, and it caused the 9-headed lion's mental state to be instantly shattered. Poo-pee-you-pee-you. His 9 heads flew into the air, and blood sprayed out like a waterfall. But in the blink of an eye, his body and the head that had been tossed into the air turned into ashes and disappeared completely. A single slash had slain the 9-headed lion demon. That terrifying scene caused the azure snake and the enormous bird to be astounded, and they didn't dare hesitate to turn around and flee. Boom! Each of them stirred up a fiendish wind that tore through the void as they fled with all their might. But halfway through, the green snake's mountain-like body cracked apart piece by piece, as if it had been chopped into pieces by a sharp blade. Its miserable shriek had just sounded out when it stopped abruptly. At practically the exact same time, the enormous bone bird was fiercely grabbed by a large hand, and it was directly crushed into pieces, causing bone powder to rustle as it sprayed into the sky. But the 3 boundless realm demons were all killed by Lin Sun in the blink of an eye, as if they were made of paper. Looking at the mountains again, those demons who were still alive were all stunned there, obviously scared out of their wits. Lin Sun didn't show any mercy and waved his sleeve. Endless Taoist light, like a sword rain falling from the sky, covered the mountains densely and slaughtered those demons on the spot. None of them survived. After doing all this, Lin Sun felt a little better. But when he looked at the tens of thousands of humans who were kept like livestock in the prison, he couldn't help but be stunned. Those people, whether men or women, old or young, didn't show any joy or excitement of being saved. Instead, they were all shivering with panic and uneasiness. In fact, none of them had even thought of escaping from that prison. Seeing this scene, Lin Sun felt a chill in his heart. He suddenly realized that for the human clan in this world, perhaps from birth, they had already accepted the fact that they would become slaves, food, and great medicine. They had already been tamed and subdued to the bone. Apart from possessing intelligence and intelligence, they were no different from domesticated livestock. Even if he could save these people now, once he left, they were bound to become the food of those demons and monsters, and they would be at their beck and call. Unless he could kill all the demons and monsters in this world. But was that possible? Lin Sun looked up at the sky. This was the evil origin world, and the heavenly cycle Tao laws that were distributed here had long since been determined. Even if he could change it for a moment, he definitely couldn't change the human clan of this world forever. Lin Sun murmured, "Looks like the true leader of all evil in this world is the heavenly cycle Tao laws." Taking a deep breath, Lin Sun turned around and left. He realized that when the day came when his Tao could replace the heavenly cycle Tao laws of the evil origin world, it would be equivalent to eliminating the leader of all evil. In order to accomplish this, he had to understand everything about this world, sense the heavenly cycle Tao laws of this world, and find the source of chaos of this world. Only in this way could he truly replace it with his own Tao. In the following period of time, Lin Sun passed through numerous ferocious mountains and rivers, and he saw numerous tragic scenes of the human clan. It was like a purgatory for livestock. He entered many cities and countries, and all sorts of demon civilizations existed in those places. Regardless of whether it was the rules or laws, they were all set by the demons. On the other hand, the humans living in those cities didn't deserve to talk about status at all. They were inferior to slaves, and they were no different from livestock. But Lin Sun didn't see much resistance. Even some of the humans who had embarked on the path of cultivation were resigned to their fate when they encountered danger. Lin Sun had never seen any human try to change all of this. Lin Sun, who'd witnessed all of this, had the impulse to attack many times, but he'd restrained himself in the end. 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, until half a year later, Lin Sun's figure appeared in the void. From today onwards, I, Lin Sun, shall rule over this world." As he murmured, Lin Sun's tall figure suddenly charged out with an unparalleled aura, and it rose all the way into the depths of the clouds. Bang! The universe Tao laws that belong to this world instantly suffered an extremely huge impact, and it emanated extremely violent fluctuations before it started to collapse and collapse. At this moment, the countless living beings scattered throughout the evil origin world were alarmed, and all of them were terrified and uneasy. In their field of vision, the heavens and the earth were trembling while the heaven Tao was being destroyed. It was like the end of the world had arrived, and it was about to destroy the world. Even the humans in this world were panicking and terrified. But in next to no time, a completely new universe Tao law appeared and swept out. In practically the time of a few breaths, it enveloped the entire evil origin world. Only then did all the living beings in the world feel as if a heavy burden had been lifted from their shoulders, and they calmed down from their terror. It seemed like all of this was just a false alarm, and nothing had changed. However, the countless humans scattered throughout the world felt an unprecedented force. It was like they'd broken through the shackles that were deeply rooted in their hearts, and they'd struggled free of the heavy brands that were pressing down on them. A wisp of inspiration arose in the hearts of every single one of them. It was a spark of resistance and fighting spirit. It was the desire to change the situation they were in. The strong would grow and multiply without end. Sooner or later, the human race would rise to prominence in this world and resist the world. They would sweep through all the demons and monsters that stood above them, and they would no longer have to suffer the humiliation of being trampled upon and enslaved by others. This was the grand Tao that Lin Sun had determined. If he was willing, he was entirely capable of using the universe Tao law that he'd grasped to sweep through all the demons and devils in the evil origin world. It was even to the extent that he could carry out heavenly punishment and trample all the demons and devils in the world beneath the feet of the human race. However, Lin Sun didn't do that. Without the demons and devils, the human race would still encounter other dangers. By trampling the demons and devils beneath their feet, the human race would have a chance to rise again sooner or later. At the bottom of it all, the evil of the evil origin world didn't lie in how formidable the demons and devils were, nor did it lie in how weak the human race was. It lay in whether the human race had the conviction to resist the evil that was born in this world. Indeed, Lin Sun had determined the grand Tao, and he could turn the tide and change everything in this world. However, once he left, the quintessence of chaos in the evil origin world was bound to rule over this world once more. At that time, everything would return to how it was in the past. Only by truly awakening the will to fight in the hearts of the human race and making the human race strong enough would they be able to avoid being enslaved forever. In Lin Sun's opinion, the reason why the human race was the human race was because they possessed the will to fight and strengthen themselves when they were oppressed. Without this spirit, how could the human race even be called a human? What Lin Sun was doing now was to leave behind a seed. In the future, as the human race rose and the human Tao flourished, the human race would be able to resist the evil of the evil origin world without fear for generations to come. This way, the human race would be able to live on with dignity. Beneath the sky, the evil origin is the source of all evil. Only by knowing the existence of evil will one know the value of kindness. Lin Sun pondered silently. Cultivators of different races would encounter different kinds of evil when they entered the evil origin world. Without a doubt, this was the influence of the quintessence of chaos in the evil origin world. Slaying the head of all evil did not mean destroying the evildoers. Instead, it meant giving all living beings in the world the will to fight and fight against evil. This was the crux of why all living beings in the world could live on without end. And this was only in the evil origin world. If it was in the outside world, then the so-called evil was just like the kindness in everyone's hearts. There was good and evil between cultivators and ordinary people. It was very difficult to distinguish between them. Devil cultivators were not necessarily evil, and Buddhist cultivators were not necessarily kind. So long as all living beings were alive, they were bound to experience good and evil, right and wrong, and black and white. All of this was a part of life. For example, no matter how strong the beginning was, it was impossible for him to sweep away all the evil in the world, and it was impossible for him to make all living beings be kind forever. In short, good and evil, right and wrong, black and white, these were the understandings and concepts that every single living being possessed. The reason every single living being was different was because they possessed different understandings and concepts. In the eyes of cultivators, the difference in their understandings and concepts was the difference in the grand Taoist they pursued. Some could coexist while others couldn't. After pondering for a long time by himself beneath the sky, Lin Sun's understanding of good and evil, right and wrong, and black and white grew deeper. He realized that the Tao laws of the evil origin world didn't lie in how evil it was, and it lay in the fact that the energy of the grand Tao was related to the Tao of good and evil, black and white, right and wrong. Once one comprehended its profundities, then one would be able to possess the Tao laws of the world to punish evil and promote kindness, and it would allow all living beings in the world to distinguish between right and wrong. Chapter 3276. After a long time, Lin Sun returned to his senses. He looked at the nearby space and issued a command in his heart. Bang! An expanse of the origin energy of chaos surged out and fused into his body. This was the profundity of the origin of chaos in the evil origin world, and Lin Sun had refined it and fused it into his own cultivation. Half a year has passed in the blink of an eye. It's time for me to leave. Lin Sun took a step forward, and his figure instantly vanished into the seemingly empty divine gate, the profound God domain. According to the news, Lin Sun has already entered the fifth heaven realm, the evil origin world. With his cultivation, it's sufficient for him to pass through this world with ease. It's even to the extent that if nothing unexpected happens, he's probably already entered the sixth heaven realm, the thousand calamities realm. The Gone Division's master of destiny, Pei Tu, spoke in a low voice within a hall. The other 8 masters of destiny were silent, and their expressions flickered indeterminately. Now, they were certain that Lin Sun had passed through the mortal transformation, calamity, gloom, and origin world. During this process, the envoys of destiny under the command of the Kuan Division, Sun Division, and Zhen Division had successively suffered heavy injuries. During this period of time, as the bad news continued to spread, the mood of the 9 masters of the 9 divisions of absolute beginning had become heavy and oppressive. In my opinion, this kid's combat strength isn't any weaker than the immeasurable Tao Lord. I'm afraid it'll be very difficult to find anyone among the envoys of destiny under our command who can go against him. The Zhen Division's master of destiny, Dubhe, spoke softly. How could I not be aware of this? Could it be that we're just going to give up just like that? The Sun Division's master of destiny, Feng He, frowned. He was very unwilling to give up just like that. What else can we do but give up? Send our envoys of destiny to their deaths? Someone spoke coldly. Everyone, there's no need to argue. Suddenly, the Gone Division's master of destiny, Pei Tu, spoke, and he drew the gazes of everyone to him. It's not impossible to deal with Lin Sun now, Pei Tu said in a low voice. For example, if you want to deal with Lin Sun in the fifth heaven realm, Thousand Tribulations realm, you can start near the Heavenly Tribulation platform, the Thousand Calamities realm, Spirit's God realm, sixth heaven realm. In this world, there were all kinds of dangerous and unpredictable tribulations. There were Tao tribulations that targeted one's cultivation, heart tribulations that targeted one's state of mind, and all kinds of strange, killing tribulations. For example, a careless thought could provoke the heavenly demon tribulation, and a casual action could attract the karma tribulation. Each was different. Once cultivators entered the Heaven Tao tribulation platform, they had to overcome all sorts of tribulations, and if they wanted to leave, then they had to ascend the Heaven Tao tribulation platform and overcome 9 great tribulations. Only in this way would they be able to draw down the chaotic Tao fruit and enter the heaven entrance. The 9 Destiny Tao Lords had traversed this dimension in the past, so they were naturally clearly aware that there was indeed a chance to ambush Lin Sun near the tribulation platform. However, this was also a huge risk. Wei Yun, how many mandate envoys does your contrive have in the Thousand Tribulations realm? Pei Tu looked at one of them. This was a white-clothed man with a well-proportioned and slender figure. He wore a feathered crown, had slanted brows, and starry eyes. He was the King Clan's mandate Tao Lord, Wei Yun. 19. Wei Yun said, "The leader is Tao Master Myriad Mirror. I'll send him a message. As for whether he'll go all out, I can't guarantee." "That's enough." Pei Tu nodded and said, "If we succeed, then it'll be a great merit." The Thousand Tribulations realm. Lin Sun and Xia Ji walked side by side towards the easternmost area of this dimension. The rumored Heaven Tao Tribulation platform was located in that area. According to rumor, the chaos quintessence of this dimension contains the profundities of tribulation. A long time ago, the absolute beginning ruler obtained a strand of tribulation quintessence in this dimension, and he possessed the ability to control and utilize the Great Desolation Tribulation. I just don't know if it's true. Lin Sun spoke softly on the way. The Thousand Tribulations realm was like the origin of all tribulations in the world, and it was filled with the energy of countless tribulations. Lin Sun couldn't help but be curious about this. If the rumor about the absolute beginning ruler was true, then wouldn't it mean that he would have the opportunity to seek out the profundities of controlling the Great Desolation Tribulation? Bang! As he spoke, a bolt of tribulation lightning suddenly descended from the sky. The gorgeous lightning wrapped in a terrifying aura of tribulation fell down, and it was boundlessly terrifying. That level of power could even threaten the existence of the boundless realm. However, Lin Sun had long been accustomed to it. With a wave of his sleeve, all the tribulation lightning that covered the sky was swallowed into Lin Sun's sleeve without leaving a single drop. Lin Sun stretched out his hand and turned it over. The tribulation lightning had been refined into a strand of gray and misty tribulation quintessence. Although it was as thin as a strand of hair, it was full of terrifying destructive power. But in Lin Sun's eyes, besides the destructive power, there is also a strand of mysterious vitality that was extremely difficult to detect. The so-called tribulation is the foundation that cultivators use to become strong. Overcoming tribulation without dying is like enduring rebirth, and it causes one's own cultivation to undergo a transformation. Thus, it causes the cultivator's own life to undergo a transformation, and it allows the cultivator to go from weak to strong and rise step by step. Lin Sun said softly. As he spoke, this strand of tribulation quintessence had been completely refined by him. Since entering the Thousand Tribulations realm, he and Xia Ji had encountered various tribulations along the way. Some were Tao tribulations that targeted their own cultivation path. Some were mental tribulations that targeted their state of mind. And there were all kinds of unexpected killing tribulations, such as calamity tribulation, divine devil tribulation, and so on. In the beginning, Lin Sun was still very vigilant. But as he defeated and refined those tribulations again and again, his state of mind had become extremely calm and composed now. But if you fail to pass the tribulation, your soul will disperse. Xia Ji said, "How can you become stronger without paying a price? The way of heaven is to reduce the surplus and make up the deficiency. Everything in the world is maintained in a delicate balance and opposition. Whether it's passing the tribulation or seizing the opportunity, you must bear the risk if you want to gain something." Lin Sun said casually, "Some people think that the existence of tribulation is destruction and extinction. But if there is no tribulation, how can one become stronger?" After a pause, Lin Sun said, "This is somewhat similar to the nirvana ultimacy I have mastered. Passing the tribulation without dying is like going through nirvana." Xia Ji looked at Lin Sun speechlessly and said, "What you say now is getting more and more boring." Lin Sun was speechless. She was obviously not interested in these things at all. Lin Sun stopped talking about these mysterious topics and said, "Let's find a chance to barbecue." Ji's eyes lit up and she said, "It should have been like this long ago." She thought about it and realized that she hadn't tasted Lin Sun's cooking ever since she entered the myriad Wonder Dao ruins. Lin Sun also smiled. Ji had always been so simple. She only cared about what she cared about, and the things that made her happy were always inseparable from eating and sleeping. As for the Tao and ambition, she had never thought about it all. Sometimes, Lin Sun even envied Ji. Her mind was simple and pure, so she didn't have so many troubles and worries. They talked as they moved forward, and they constantly encountered such tribulations along the way. 6 hours later, finally, they saw the tribulation platform of heaven. It was 3 kilometers tall and completely black like ink. It was enveloped in a gray aura of chaos, and there were billions of lightning arcs surging in the area around it. Looking from afar, it seemed like the origin of the world's tribulations. At this moment, there were many figures in the area around the tribulation platform. All of them were existences in the boundless realm, and their auras were more terrifying than the last. In Lin Sun's opinion, those figures were only stronger than top existences like Qi Qianji and Yiwuyin. After all, the tribulation realm was the 6th heaven realm, and the cultivators that could arrive here were bound to be stronger than those in the previous heaven realms. When Lin Sun and Ji approached, they attracted the attention of many people near the tribulation platform. One of them immediately laughed and said, "My young friend Lin Sun, Miss Ji, I didn't expect you to come so quickly. Senior, we meet again." Lin Sun laughed as well. That person was Qi Qianji. Lin Sun. At this moment, the nearby boundless realm existences revealed expressions of understanding because they knew Lin Sun's identity. In the last few hundreds of years, news about Lin Sun had spread far and wide. Even though all of them had been trapped in this world for countless years, they'd more or less heard of Lin Sun's deeds. During their conversation, Lin Sun found out that Qi Qianji had been here for 100 years, yet he'd never passed the tribulation platform. According to Qi Qianji, the tribulations distributed on the tribulation platform varied from person to person. The stronger one was, the more terrifying the tribulations one would suffer. For example, some of those old fellows in this area had been trapped here for hundreds of thousands of years, yet they'd still been unable to pass through it until now. Bang! While they were chatting, a figure suddenly fell down from the tribulation platform. His entire body was covered in injuries, and he was in an extremely miserable state. As soon as he descended to the ground, he couldn't help but speak bitterly. He was only a step away again. Many cultivators in the surroundings felt a wave of pity. That old fellow has attempted it countless times, yet he'd been defeated by the 9th tribulation every single time. Qi Qianji let out a long sigh. "Is there anyone else who intends to challenge the platform today?" Someone asked. Everyone in the surroundings shook their heads. Lin Sun gazed at Ji. "Do you want to give it a try?" "All right." As she spoke, Ji flashed directly towards the tribulation platform. Qi Qianji couldn't help but say, "My friend, all of you have just arrived here and don't understand how terrifying the tribulation platform is. How can you rashly allow Miss Ji to attempt it? Let her go. She'll be fine even if she fails." Lin Sun smiled. At this moment, Ji's actions attracted the attention of everyone present. Swoosh! Her slender and graceful figure instantly vanished from the tribulation platform that was covered by a myriad of bolts of lightning. It was impossible to see what she was experiencing from the outside world. Even if they released their divine senses, it wouldn't work. Seeing this scene, the cultivators who'd originally planned to leave chose to stay and watch the final outcome. Qi Qianji took this opportunity to send a voice transmission. "My friend, as far as I know, the 9 tribes of divine mandate envoys regard you as their enemy. In this tribulation realm, there are 19 contribe envoys. Each of them is stronger than the other, especially their leader, Dao Master Wanjing. His combat strength is unfathomable. You must be careful." Chapter 3277. Chi-Chinji's warning was full of concern and worry. He didn't know how Lin Sun fought his way from the mortal transformation realm to here. He also didn't know that Lin Sun was different from before. But the more he thought about it, the more touched Lin Sun felt. If it was anyone else, would they dare to warn him like Chi-Chinji when they knew he was the enemy of the 9 tribes of Taichu? They would have drawn the line long ago. After all, the Taichu ruler's forces were spread across the entire ruins of Dao. How could an ordinary, boundless realm cultivator dare to get involved? Senior, don't worry. Even if they don't come after me, I will go after them, Lin Sun whispered. Chi-Chinji was startled. Don't force yourself. This is the ruins of Dao. It's different from the Sea of Destiny. Lin Sun smiled. Senior, do you think I'm that kind of arrogant person? Of course not. Chi-Chinji answered without hesitation. Then he understood and couldn't help looking at Lin Sun. Are you sure you can win? Lin Sun nodded. Chi-Chinji's eyes turned subtle. He didn't say anything else. He had learned about Lin Sun's actions back in the Sea of Destiny. He knew that Lin Sun must be confident if he dared to show such an attitude. That's right. It's only been a few years, and he's already able to make it to the Thousand Tribulations realm. His cultivation must have gone through a tremendous change, Chi-Chinji thought. However, although he understood it, he couldn't see how powerful Lin Sun was now. 10 minutes later, suddenly, in the sky above the heavenly tribulation platform that was completely enveloped by the aura of the chaotic calamity, a violent fluctuation appeared, and then a heavenly gate appeared. She passed the 9 tribulations? The crowd was in an uproar. The old monsters were all shocked. That woman had just arrived in the Thousand Tribulations realm and passed the 9 tribulations. She attracted the Chaos Dao fruit and had the chance to leave. They almost couldn't believe it. Chi-Chinji took a deep breath and murmured, as expected of an existence that controls the law of destiny. This Lady Xia Ji is truly amazing. Lin Sun, I'll wait for you in the world of creation. Xia Ji only had time to leave a sound before her figure disappeared into the gate of heaven. Witnessing all this, Lin Sun was very calm. Senior, have you ever heard of the primordium ruler obtaining a portion of the primal chaos essence in this world, allowing him to control the great silence, lifeless tribulation? He asked. Of course I have. Chi-Chinji said. It's said that it's very likely to be true. I've been in this realm for many years, and I've discussed this with many fellow Taoists. Almost all of them are certain that the origin of chaos in the Thousand Tribulations realm is related to the origin of tribulation. In the end, the deathless tribulation is a tribulation as well. If you're able to comprehend the quintessence of tribulation, then you'll naturally be able to control and utilize the deathless tribulation. Since that's the case, I'll give it a try myself. Lin Sun nodded and immediately stepped forward. Chi-Chinji was stunned. He opened his mouth and closed it again. If Xia Ji could pass the 9 tribulations, how could Lin fail? The eyes of the practitioners nearby were immediately attracted by Lin Sun, and they all had a strange look on their faces. Xia Ji had given them a great shock before, and now Lin Sun was also planning to challenge the tribulation platform of heaven. How could they not be surprised? Whoosh! Lin Sun's figure flashed past the billions of lightning arcs, and he appeared on the tribulation platform of heaven. Only when he stood on the platform did he find that although the platform was thousands of meters high, it was divided into 9 stone steps, and each step was covered with a dense and astonishing aura of the origin of chaos. Boom! Before Lin Sun could continue sensing, the first major tribulation came. At that moment, Lin Sun felt that he had come to a strange world of nothingness, and the endless aura of the tribulation transformed into billions of stars, rushing towards him. Lin Sun felt that he was like a speck of dust. The difference between a speck of dust and a star was absolutely like the difference between heaven and earth. Yet now, a myriad of stars formed from the energy of the tribulation were charging towards him, and it was a scene that simply caused him to feel despair. Lin Sun didn't retreat, and he just stood there. Boom! A star whizzed towards him and was smashed by his palm, and the light of tribulation scattered all over the sky. It seemed to be very casual, but then countless stars of tribulation bombarded Lin Sun's figure at once. Boom, boom, in this world of nothingness, there was a constant roar like rolling thunder. It could be clearly seen that in the place where Lin Sun originally stood, the dense stars exploded, setting off endless torrents of tribulation light, but then many more stars rushed towards him. As a result, the world was completely filled with the boundless tribulation light and the roar. No one knew how long it had been. Boom. A big abyss appeared. At first, it was only 30 meters wide, and then it became hundreds of meters, thousands of meters, tens of thousands of meters. In the process, the countless stars of tribulation were swallowed up like a clay ox falling into the sea. In the end, the world was swallowed up, and all the tribulation light and stars disappeared. The first major tribulation was swallowed up in one fell swoop. The big abyss shrank little by little in the roar, and finally turned into Lin Sun's tall figure. The tribulation light was flowing all over his body, and the breath of destruction was steaming. He seemed to be a god coming out of the tribulation with unpredictable power. At this time, all kinds of wonderful insights came to Lin Sun's mind, which belonged to the mystery of the origin of tribulation. But before he could understand it carefully, the second major tribulation came again. This major tribulation was a mysterious and unpredictable mental tribulation, which aimed at the 7 emotions and 6 desires. It was impossible to avoid, and he could only face it head-on. Even with Lin Sun's state of mind, he was under great pressure. But fortunately, it wasn't too serious. In just a moment, this mental tribulation was broken by Lin Sun. In this way, as soon as Lin Sun broke through a major tribulation, a new one would appear, and each of them could be called peerlessly horrible and extremely dangerous. But Lin Sun's coping strategy was extremely simple. He would face it head-on, defeat it, and then swallow its power. Although he had encountered many threats, he resolved them one by one. In the distance of the tribulation platform of heaven, Qi Qianji and the other cultivators were watching and waiting. Suddenly, a series of ripples appeared in the nearby void, followed by one figure after another appearing out of thin air. There were a total of 19 figures. The leader was a red-haired man in a python robe. Dazzling divine chains appeared all over his body, and his aura was extremely terrible. Tao Master Wanjing. He was a terrifying figure who was only a step away from boundless Tao Lord. The other 18 cultivators around him were all the Kan tribe's destined messengers. When they appeared, Qi Qianji's face suddenly changed, and the other cultivators present were also stiff. They had a hunch that Tao Master Wanjing and the others were obviously coming for Lin Sun. Everyone, don't delay any longer. Take advantage of his tribulation to kill him. Tao Master Wanjing waved his hand. The next moment, he and the other 18 destined messengers all took out a secret treasure. Boom! These secret treasures all surged with the power of the great silence fatal tribulation, and the aura released was so strong that it made all the cultivators present shudder. And under the control of Tao Master Wanjing and the others, these secret treasures swept through the air towards the tribulation platform of heaven in the distance. Boom! 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 At that moment, 19 kinds of secret treasures glowed, and the power of the great silence fatal tribulation poured out like an avalanche, rumbling towards the tribulation platform of heaven. All of a sudden, the world was in chaos, and all kinds of tribulation lights and roars surged and rolled, as if it was the end of the world. Witnessing all this, Qi Qianji's face turned pale, and he was lost. Tao Master Wanjing and the others obviously came prepared. They wanted to take advantage of Lin Sun's tribulation to kill him in one fell swoop. When he looked at the other cultivators in the surroundings, all of them felt a chill run down their spines while their faces turned pale with astonishment. Tao Master Wanjing and the others were too ruthless. As soon as they arrived, they directly attacked Lin Sun. Lin Sun, who was in the middle of passing the tribulation, was affected by such an impact. Not to mention failing the tribulation, he was afraid that he would die in it. After a moment, the 19 secret treasures became dim, and the accumulated power of the great silence fatal tribulation was obviously on the verge of exhaustion. Seeing this, Tao Master Wan Jing and the others scattered and put away the secret treasures. In this way, how can Lin Sun survive? A messenger of destiny said with a smile. He's too impatient. He just arrived in the tribulation realm, but he rashly went to the tribulation platform of heaven. He deserves this tribulation. Someone sneered. As they talked, their eyes were fixed on the tribulation platform in the distance. As time went by, the area around the tribulation platform gradually returned to its usual calm. But because of the chaotic aura, it was impossible to see the scene clearly. Is he dead? Someone couldn't help asking. He should have met a disaster. The fruit of chaos and the gate of heaven didn't appear. If he is still alive, even if he failed to pass the tribulation, he should have retreated from the tribulation platform, someone said in a low voice. Is he still alive? Has he been passing the tribulation? Someone frowned. If he can survive, I can even slit my own throat and commit suicide, Tao Master Wan Jing said in a cold voice. A long time ago, they had used this method to interfere with an enemy's tribulation, causing him to die on the tribulation platform of heaven. Now they were doing the same thing. How could Lin Sun survive? But at this moment, an indifferent voice came from the tribulation platform of heaven, which was covered by the chaotic aura. Then you can kill yourself now. Everyone was silent. They couldn't believe their ears. Lin Sun was still alive. Qi Qianji, who was lost, suddenly became excited. He was still alive, still alive. A tall figure swept out from the tribulation platform of heaven. His white clothes were spotless, and his body was unscathed. It was Lin Sun. Tao Master Wanjing's face was extremely ugly and full of disbelief. This is impossible. How can you survive? The other messengers around him also changed their expressions. No one expected that Lin Sun could survive such a surprise attack. Chapter 3278. The entire place was silent. Not a single sound could be heard. Lin Sun had walked out of the tribulation platform of heaven alive, which was beyond everyone's expectations. Tao Master Wan Jing and the others found it hard to accept. Why? You said you wanted to commit suicide, but why didn't you do it? Lin Sun looked at Tao Master Wan Jing and said sarcastically. Everyone's expression changed. Previously, Tao Master Wan Jing said with certainty that if Lin Sun didn't die, he could even kill himself. Now, Lin Sun was indeed not dead. However, would Tao Master Wan Jing keep his words? Many people looked at Tao Master Wan Jing and saw his face was livid and gloomy. His eyes were surging with terrifying killing intent, but he obviously had no intention of committing suicide. However, no one dared to laugh at him. No matter what, Tao Master Wan Jing was definitely the most terrifying existence in the Thousand Calamity realm. Do it! Tao Master Wan Jing couldn't keep his face anymore and waved his hand to give the order. Boom! Beside him, the 18 Heavens Mandate envoys moved together. Each of them took out their treasures, activated their magic, and deduced all kinds of incredible great Tao phenomena. The world shook, divine light swept across, and the sound of Tao shook the sky. The mighty torrent of destruction swept towards Lin Sun. Lin Sun stood still with his hands behind his back. When the torrent of power that was enough to make everyone despair rushed towards him, it was blocked in front of him. It was as if it was blocked by an invisible moat. Then boom! The torrent of energy that covered the heavens and the earth exploded and dispersed with a bang, and the rain of light that covered the sky vanished without a trace. Even the dozens of eternal Tao soldiers were shaken and flew out in disorder, wailing incessantly. This incredible scene stunned Qi Qianji and the other cultivators. Lin Sun didn't move at all, but he easily resolved the killing tribulation in front of him. Tao Master Wan Jing and the others widened their eyes and felt their scalps go numb. How is this possible? How dare you plot against me with such little ability? You really don't know what's good for you. Lin Sun shook his head and seemed to be dispirited. While his voice was still echoing, a clear sword sound rang out. Sword chi appeared out of thin air, and waves of sword intent suddenly covered the 9 heavens and 10 earths, filling the void. Bang! Tao Master Myriad Mirror's body was the first to explode. He was crushed by the sword essence, and his soul was scattered. Following that, the bodies of the other heavenly mandate envoys shattered one by one. They were killed on the spot by the sword chi that blotted out the sky, and both their bodies and souls were destroyed. Everything happened in the blink of an eye. The domineering and bloody scene caused everyone to shiver in fear. Their state of mind was severely impacted. Even Qi Qianji was shocked. His heart was in turmoil. Before, he had expected that Lin Sun's cultivation had changed dramatically, but he didn't expect that Lin Sun could be so powerful. No wonder he was able to survive the Heavenly Tribulation Platform's Heavenly Tribulation Platform, Qi Qianji murmured. At this point, the 19 contrived Heavenly Mandate envoys scattered throughout the Thousand Tribulations realm had all perished. On the other hand, Lin Sun turned around and flashed back into the Tribulation Platform. Previously, he had been in the midst of the 7th major tribulation, but he had been ambushed by Tao Master Wan Jing and the others, so he had no choice but to stop and deal with the situation. Now that all his enemies had been wiped out, he had to go through the tribulation again. Seeing Lin Sun's figure disappear completely, the old fellows in the field relaxed, and their expressions became extremely complicated. Brother Qi, you know Lin Sun the best. Can you tell us about him? Someone couldn't help but ask. The others also looked at Qi Qianji. Why not? However, I met Lin Sun in the Sea of Destiny, so my knowledge is limited. If you're interested, I'll tell you what I know. Qi Qianji said with a smile. Time passed slowly. On the tribulation platform, Lin Sun went through one major tribulation after another. When he broke through the 9th major tribulation, he had arrived at the highest point of the tribulation platform. A mass of chaotic origin power fell down and bathed him in it. In an instant, Lin Sun sensed the mystery of the tribulation origin, and comprehension surged into his mind like a tide. In a trance, he seemed to see a strange and incredible scene. The changes in the world and the passage of time in the world all carried the aura of tribulation. It was precisely because of the existence of tribulation that everything in the world revealed a form of opposition and balance between life and death, destruction and rebirth. Plants could grow tenaciously amidst wind, frost, rain, and snow, yet they would wither and die amidst wind, frost, rain, and snow as well. To plants, wind, frost, rain, and snow were tribulations. Some could transcend tribulations and transform, yet others would wither and die amidst them. This was the opposition and balance between life and death, destruction and rebirth. Based on this, it was deduced that everything in the world was the same, and tribulations existed in everything. Moreover, all sorts of unbelievable variables appeared amidst the passage of time in the world, and they were related to the various tribulations. For example, if someone sought fortune, then they had to bear the corresponding risk. This sort of risk was a tribulation. Those who dealt with the tribulation would obtain fortune, whereas those who encountered the tribulation and failed would naturally obtain nothing. Similarly, the birth, aging, illness, death, love, hatred, and affection of ordinary people all had tribulations within them, and there was a difference between good and bad outcomes. It was even to the extent that when cultivators stepped onto the path of cultivation, there were even more tribulations. There was the tribulation of the Tao, the tribulation of the heart, and the tribulation of slaughter. All the ups and downs could be considered to be tribulations. No matter if it was the phenomena of the world, everything in the world, or even ordinary people and cultivators, so long as they experienced tribulation and lived, then they would be able to realize rebirth. Once they experienced tribulation and perished, then there was no need to talk about it. On the other hand, the quintessence of tribulation was the combination of two types of energy, destruction and transformation. When cultivators experience tribulation lightning to break through, then the tribulation lightning was filled with the most direct energy of destruction and transformation. As he comprehended more and more profundities of the quintessence of tribulation, Lin Sun faintly came to a slight understanding. The so-called transition of an era was a tribulation that targeted a civilization of an era. When a civilization was sufficiently strong, then it would be able to survive the transition of era and return to the ruins of creation. Conversely, it would completely vanish from the world. On the other hand, the five signs tribulation that targeted ordinary cultivators and the deathless tribulation that targeted boundless realm cultivators were the same. Those who overcame it could possess even more formidable energy of the Grand Tao, and they could allow their cultivation to undergo a transformation. If they were unable to overcome it, then they would perish. However, the tribulation of the transition of an era ought to be called the most terrifying tribulation in the world. Once this tribulation appeared, a myriad of tribulations would follow, and it would cause countless tribulations to arise at the right time, like the five signs tribulation, the deathless tribulation, and so on and so forth. It was also at this moment that Lin Sun finally understood that the source of the deathless tribulation that caused boundless realm cultivators in the world to tremble in fear was within the ruins of profundity. Precisely speaking, this tribulation came from the forbidden area of profundity. The forbidden area of profundity was called the forbidden area of life by absolute beginning, and it was extremely likely that it contained the profundities of the origin of life, the Tao of life. On the other hand, the deathless tribulation was a great tribulation that targeted the lives of boundless realm cultivators, and it could be discerned from the word life in its name. So it wasn't strange that the source of this tribulation came from the forbidden area of profundity. Moreover, Lin Sun was able to comprehend these profound auras within the tribulation quintessence of Calamity Realm, and he finally knew why Absolute Beginning was able to borrow and control the energy of the deathless tribulation. The reason was that Absolute Beginning had once comprehended the profundities of the tribulation quintessence, and this was equivalent to possessing the ability to control the myriad of tribulations in the world. This was precisely the truth of the mastermind that Chen Shi, Chen Linkong, the master of the heart core, and Golden Cicada were painstakingly searching for. The grass snake is gray, and the veins are thousands of miles long. Who would have thought that the ruins of profundity that boundless realm cultivators viewed as a place to avoid the deathless tribulation would actually be the source of this tribulation? At this moment, an indescribable emotion surged within Lin Sun's heart. Things in this world were often so inconceivable. Since entering the ruins of profundity of profundity of profundity of Tao, Lin Sun had already solved many mysteries in his heart. When he was in the mortal transformation realm, it made him realize that the power of Tao creation existed in this world, and he witnessed the supreme, elegant demeanor of Chen Shi, Absolute Beginning, and that swordsman. In the Calamity Realm, it made him realize that there was a connection between the ruins of profundity of Tao and the ruins of creation. At this point, the connection between the four great ruins of Tao had been clearly seen through by him. In the dark world, it allowed him to determine that the reason terrifying existences like Absolute Beginning and Chen Shi had stayed in the profound God domain was very likely because they'd encountered a bottleneck in their cultivation. In other words, they'd already walked to the end of the eternal path, and they'd started to explore a higher path. The reason their cultivation hadn't been able to break through was because they hadn't truly stepped onto that higher path. In the origin world, it allowed Lin Sun to understand the origins of the Grand Devourer Abyss, the origins of the Eternal Night, Divine Emperor, and information about the Life Tao. Moreover, it allowed Lin Sun to completely understand that the reason he was regarded as a variable was because of the connection between the profundities of Nirvana and the Life Tao. In the evil origin world, it allowed Lin Sun to distinguish the paths of good and evil and the principles of right and wrong. On the other hand, in the Calamity Realm, it allowed him to see through the profundities of the quintessence of tribulation, and he understood the origin of the deathless tribulation. It could be said that the mysteries that had accumulated in Lin Sun's heart in the past were being revealed one by one after he entered the ruins of profundity of Tao. How could he not sigh with emotion? After a long time, Lin Sun awoke from his state of comprehension. The reason that deathless tribulation is unable to harm me is because the profundities of nirvana are sufficient to deal with this tribulation that targets life. Now, I've grasped the profundities of the quintessence of tribulation, just like the absolute beginning ruler. Once I arrive at the profound God domain, then so long as I'm able to sense the aura within the forbidden area of profundity, I'll be able to utilize the energy of the deathless tribulation as well. Lin Sun muttered in his heart. On the other hand, with the attainments and wisdom of Master, Senior Chen Shi, and the others, they should have seen through all of this a long time ago. Lin Sun shook his head, and then his gaze pierced through the gray and hazy chaotic tribulation energy to look at Qi Qianji, who stood in the distance. Senior, I'll be going on ahead. Lin Sun cupped his hands from afar, and his voice swept through the heavens and the earth. Take care, young brother. Qi Qianji cupped his hands, and he was unable to calm down in his heart. Even though Lin Sun had surpassed him in the ocean of destiny, the gap between them wasn't huge. Yet now he suddenly realized that it would probably be impossible for him to catch up to Lin Sun's footsteps for the rest of his life. The name of a world was changed, and the seventh world was changed from world creation to world determination. Chapter 3279. The Profound God Domain. Within a hall, the Kan tribe's master of destiny, Wei Yun, had a gloomy expression as he said, Doubt, Master Myriad Mirror, and the others have failed as well. A wisp of gloominess couldn't help but arise between the brows of the other heavenly mandate lords. It had only been less than a year and a half since he'd entered the ruins of Tao, yet Lin Sun had successively traversed the mortal transformation world, calamity world, dark world, origin trace world, evil origin world, and calamity world. This sort of speed could be said to be world-shocking. After all, there were numerous cultivators trapped in those heavenly realms, and some have been trapped for hundreds of thousands of years. However, Lin Sun was able to kill his way out of Calamity World and arrive at the Tao world defined by the seventh heaven in a year and a half. This speed could naturally be said to be terrifying. All those years ago, when the heavenly mandate lords tried to traverse the 9 heavenly realms of the divine domain, they'd spent at least 1,000 years. Compared with this, Lin Sun's speed of passing through the barriers was simply shocking. He's already arrived at the 7th heaven. If this continues, it's very likely that he'll arrive at the 9th heaven, the bound of universe. Even though the core and elite forces of our 9 divisions are stationed in the bound of universe, how formidable will Lin Sun's cultivation be when he arrives there? The Kuan tribe's master of destiny, Qin Yangzi, let out a long sigh. At this moment, he felt completely helpless. I'm sure that Lin Sun's current combat strength is absolutely not inferior to the boundless Tao Lord, and it might even surpass him. Under such circumstances, dealing with him would simply be no different than courting death by sending those envoys of destiny under my command. The Sun tribe's master of destiny, Kang He, spoke in a low voice. The atmosphere grew more and more oppressive, and the hearts of the 9 heavenly mandate lords grew heavier. No one had expected that Lin Sun would traverse the heavenly mandate realms so quickly, nor had they imagined that his cultivation in the boundless realm would be formidable to such an extent. What should we do? Everyone's expressions changed indeterminately. After a long time, the Qian tribe's master of destiny, Pei Tu, sighed and said, If only the young miss was here at this moment. Heiyu had been left by the sect master's side, and there was no news of him until now. This caused the heavenly mandate lords like them to seem to have lost their backbone. Suddenly, an extremely tall figure appeared in front of the main hall. It was an old ape with a pair of swords on its back. It was dressed in gray clothes, and because it was so big and tall, it gave off an extremely oppressive feeling just by standing there. Ape Ancestor. The 9 heavenly mandate Tao Lords stood up in unison and bowed solemnly. Feng Juezi passed the order. Don't let the emissaries of the Li tribe in the Tao-fixing realm deal with Lin Sun. The ape ancestor looked at one of them and said in a deep voice, "Yes." Feng Juezi accepted the order. He wore a red robe, his hair was gray, yet his skin was smooth like a baby's, and he assumed the position of the Li division's path of destiny. Ancestor Ape, if we do this, won't we be boosting the morale of others and diminishing our own? Pei-Tu couldn't help but ask. Ape Ancestor ignored him and looked at another person. Qin Fu, how many mandate envoys does your Jin tribe have in the 8th Heaven Realm, the Tao Development World? Qin Fu. The Jin Division's Destiny Tao Lord was the only female among the 9 Destiny Tao Lords. 7. Qin Fu answered swiftly. She wore a black dress, and her skin was snow white and crystalline. Her appearance was exquisite and peerlessly beautiful, and her eyes carried a myriad of flirtatious feelings. That's enough, Ape Ancestor said. Pass the order. Tell these 7 to mobilize all their forces to investigate the favored that will appear in the Tao Development World in the next period of time. Once they notice them, there's no need to ask about their origins and just annihilate them directly. Qin Fu accepted the order solemnly. Yes. The other Destiny Tao Lords seemed to have come to an understanding at this moment, and they spoke successively. The Tao Development World is indeed the best opportunity to annihilate Lin Sun. At that time, no matter which cultivator Lin Sun becomes in this world or what identity he possesses, his cultivation is bound to be within the lower 5 realms. The only problem is how to find him, said Pei-Tu said. However, it ought to not be difficult for those 7 emissaries of the Jin tribe. They've already become eternal figures of the Tao Development World since a very long time ago. Even though their cultivations are inferior to the boundless realm they originally possessed, annihilating a figure at the lower 5 realms is still an extremely easy matter. The Tao Development World was very special. Once a cultivator entered it, it was like seizing the body of a cultivator to become a cultivator of this world and possess the name, cultivation, and identity of this cultivator. For example, once Lin Sun entered this world, he would transform into a cultivator of this world and possess the identity and cultivation of this cultivator. It was similar to seizing the body of a cultivator to achieve rebirth. From this moment onward, Lin Sun would become a favorite of this world. If he wanted to leave the Tao Development World, then he would have to cultivate and develop an extraordinary grand Tao that belonged to his new identity. Once his cultivation broke through to the eternal realm, he would be able to draw over the chaotic Tao fruit and enter the heaven entrance. Something worthy of mentioning was that to the cultivators of the Tao Development World, the supreme grand Tao in the world was the eternal path towards the Tao Development World. Exactly. The 7 destiny emissaries of the Jin Division possess monstrous power and influence in the Tao Development World. They control the top powers in the world, and they're comparable to the 7 overlords of this world. So long as they give the order, then it ought to be very easy to find Lin Sun's new identity in the Tao Development World. Qing Yangzi was excited as well, and he said, normally speaking, as a favored, one only possesses a cultivation of the lower 5 realms. If one wants to leave, then one must improve one's cultivation as soon as possible, because numerous inconceivable changes would occur to one's body. Moreover, this sort of unusual changes would be noticed by the acquaintances of the favored, and it would cause an extremely great commotion. At that time, we only have to look for the commotion at the first possible moment, and we'll surely be able to determine the identity of the favored and annihilate him. All of them, the Destiny Tao Lords, had entered the Tao Development World in the past and appeared as favored. They'd undergone a path of cultivation that was like seizing the body of favored, so they were naturally the most clearly aware of the situation within. All of you weren't so complacent earlier. The ape ancestor spoke coldly. Pei-Tu and the others instantly revealed embarrassed expressions. Earlier, they'd been completely awed by Lin Sun's speed of passing through the Tao Development World, causing their hearts to be oppressed and heavy, and they couldn't help but feel helpless. Someone couldn't help but ask, Ape Ancestor, What if Lin Sun is able to leave the Tao development world alive? Everyone was stunned, and they looked at the ape ancestor in unison. Then we'll talk about it when he's able to arrive at the universe dimension alive. The ape ancestor turned around and left after he spoke these words. Lin Sun still didn't know that a calamity was already waiting for him in the eighth world, the Tao development world. At this moment, he and Xia Ji had just entered the seventh world. The seventh world was called the Tao world. When cultivators entered it, they would see an unknown world. The phenomena of this world were in a nameless state, and every single one of them was something that had never been recorded in the outside world. What cultivators had to do was determine the Tao for the phenomena of this world. It was just like creating words and defining their pronunciations and meanings. Every single thing had its attribute, and the defined name should contain its principle so that it could correspond to the heaven Tao and conform to its charm. Just like the Tao was originally nameless, but the strong named it Tao. The term Tao was also defined by it. Since ancient times, mountains, rivers, grass, trees, the sun, the moon, and the stars, all of these things didn't have names in the beginning either. In the Tao development world, it wasn't as simple as just a name that was determined by cultivators. Instead, they had to give those things that contained Tao marks names and give them attributes and profundities so that these things and the great Tao could conform and relate to each other, thus forming a complete system of the great Tao. It sounded simple, yet when it was actually done, it was extremely complicated and vast. It required a deep understanding and control of the Tao laws of the world in this expanse of the heavens and the earth. Thus, when the Tao was determined, the attributes and profundities contained within everything in the world would conform and be related to the Tao laws of the world. Xia Ji, I'm afraid we'll have to be separated for a while when we arrive at the Tao Development Mountain. Lin Sun spoke casually on the way. When they arrived at the Tao Development Mountain, they would be able to sense the quintessence of chaos in this world, allowing cultivators to enter an unknown world to undergo Tao determination. Once they succeeded in Tao determination, they would directly enter the eighth world, the Tao development world. Xia Ji said without hesitation, "Then let's meet in the Tao development world." The Tao development world. Lin Sun recalled the information he'd inquired about the Tao development world earlier, and he pondered deeply before he said, "In my opinion, if we arrive at the Tao development world, it's better not to expose our identities for now, and it's best not to meet them." Once they entered the Tao development world, they would transform into cultivators of this world and possess a completely new identity and name. Once they made some unusual actions, it would be extremely easy for their friends and relatives to notice it, and it would even cause some commotion. Under such circumstances, once they were noticed by their enemies, the consequences would be severe. Lin Sun told all of this to Xia Ji, and then he said, "It wouldn't be too late to consider meeting them when we possess the strength of the immortal realm." The highest realm in the Tao development world was the immortal realm. At that time, even if they were noticed by their enemies who were favored, they wouldn't be afraid to fight them. Xia Ji thought for a moment and agreed. As they spoke, they arrived near Tao Determination Mountain. This mountain was extremely steep and lofty. When looked at from afar, it seemed like a dragon soaring into the sky, and its entire body was covered in gray and hazy, chaotic energy. When Lin Sun and Xia Ji arrived, there were only a dozen or so figures scattered around Tao Determination Mountain, and they were either sitting or standing. Obviously, they'd stayed here for an extremely long time. "Hey, after so many years, there are finally new fellow Taoists," someone exclaimed in surprise. Many gazes were filled with curiosity as they looked at Lin Sun and Xia Ji, who were approaching. "I'm Lin Sun. Greetings, seniors." Lin Sun glanced at them and slightly cupped his hands in salute. "You're Lin Sun," someone blurted out in surprise. There was a commotion in the surroundings. Obviously, these old fellows had heard of things related to Lin Sun. Lin Sun thought, as expected, it's easy to handle. He asked directly, "May I ask, seniors, how many destined envoys are there in the Tao development world now?" His words caused the atmosphere in the surroundings to fall silent. Many people's expressions changed slightly. Chapter 3280. The atmosphere was heavy, and no one spoke. Old people like them were naturally clearly aware of how terrifying the emissaries of the mandate of heaven were. They weren't afraid of the emissaries of the mandate of heaven, but they were afraid of the powers they belonged to. Under such circumstances, who would dare to get involved? Seeing this, Lin Sun was not surprised. However, he was very clearly aware that these cultivators had been trapped here all year round, so it was bound to be impossible for all of them to have no enmity with the emissaries of the heavens. Indeed, a moment later, he heard a voice transmission. "Little friend, there are 11 heavenly mandate messengers from the DUI tribe in this realm. The leader is called the Heavenly Venerable Six Sons. They are currently entrenched in..." Soon, Lin Sun got the information he wanted. He did not reveal the identity of the person who sent the voice transmission, nor did he look at him. He directly left the place with Xie Ji. Having learned his lesson from the surprise attack in the Thousand Tribulations realm last time, Lin Sun decided to strike first to gain the upper hand. He would wipe out the enemies first to avoid future troubles, and then go to the Dingdao Mountain to fix the path. Beside a large lake, the Six Sons, Heavenly Venerable, and the other heavenly mandate envoys were stationed there. For many years, they had been cultivating here. Master said that we shouldn't deal with Lin Sun. Should we just sit back and do nothing when Lin Sun comes to this world? A tall man in bronze armor said with a frown. The Lord has his own arrangements. We just need to follow his orders. The Six Sons, Heavenly Venerate, said indifferently. He was like an old Taoist priest, wearing a high crown and robe, holding a horsetail whisk in his hand. My lord thinks that we are no match for Lin Sun, even if we join forces. Someone let out a long sigh, and his tone carried a hint of dissatisfaction. How about I test Lin Sun's background? If he really can't be defeated, then it's fine. But if he can't even withstand a single blow, then it'll be too easy for us. Someone was eager to try. The Six Young Heavenly Venerable fell silent for a moment before saying, "Shall we give it a try?" "Right, let's give it a try." Many people revealed looks of anticipation. People like them, being able to enter this death-fixing world, they were naturally far from what ordinary boundless realms could compare to. At this moment, laughter rang out in the distance. "Let's give it a try." While the voice was still echoing, the figures of Lin Sun and Xie Ji had already swept over from afar. Heavenly Venerable Six Sons' pupils constricted. They had yet to make a move, but their opponents had already come knocking on their door. The others were also surprised and caught off guard. "Lin Sun, are you going to fight with us?" The Six Sons, Heavenly Venerable, could not help but ask. He still couldn't imagine how confident Lin Sun was that he dared to come to him on his own initiative. "If I didn't come, I'm afraid you guys wouldn't be satisfied either." Lin Sun said indifferently, "Cut the crap. Do you want to have a try one by one or together?" The Six Sons, Heavenly Venerable, and the others frowned. Lin Sun was so confident that he took the initiative to declare war, which made them all feel that something was wrong. "Let's go together. If anything goes wrong, retreat immediately." Heavenly Venerable Six Yang took a deep breath and sent a voice transmission to the others. "All right, that's all. With the strength of the 11 of us, if we still can't do anything to the 2 of them, there is indeed no need to continue fighting." The eyes of the others flickered, and they all agreed. The next moment, boom, the Six Sons, Heavenly Venerable, and the others attacked together. They immediately used all their strength. All sorts of Dao weapons and Dao techniques filled the sky, creating a violent torrent that covered the sky. "This time, let me do it. Remember, don't interfere." As Xie Ji spoke, she had already teleported away. Lin Sun was stunned and then shook his head helplessly. He could only watch from afar. Clang! Xie Ji's slender figure was covered in a hazy rain of light. As the bone spear in her hand stabbed out, the river of fate surged out in the sky, mighty and endless. Boom! A great battle broke out. The world shook, and the sun and moon lost their light. This battle only lasted for a few breaths before deaths began to appear. Puff! Xie Ji's bone spear easily pierced through an opponent. His body exploded with a bang and was drowned by the river of fate. The expressions of the Six Sons, Heavenly Venerable, and the others changed abruptly. They wanted to escape without hesitation. However, the Sea of Fate was so vast that it covered the entire world. It also blocked the six suns' heavenly venerables' escape route. When they tried to break out with all their strength, they were hit by the power of the River of Fate and felt extremely uncomfortable. Puff! Taking advantage of this opportunity, another opponent was stabbed to death by Xia Zhi's bone spear. It was clean and neat. This made the six suns heavenly venerable and the others tremble. They were all stimulated to the point of going all out. But it was destined to be in vain. In the following time, Xia Zhi's figure constantly flashed in the battlefield, and the bone spear in her hand stabbed out one after another. Then, one opponent after another fell and was drowned by the River of Fate. In just a moment, the 11 messengers of destiny, including the six suns heavenly venerable, were killed on the spot one after another. None of them survived. If other cultivators were to witness these bloody scenes, they would definitely be terrified to the point their souls almost left their bodies. But from beginning to end, Lin Sun, who had a panoramic view of all this, seemed very calm. This was originally a battle with a great disparity in strength. After all, with Xia Zhi's current combat strength, it was not difficult for her to kill opponents at the level of the Infinite Tao Lord. I thought they were very powerful. In the distance, Xia Zhi returned with a trace of disappointment on her beautiful face. Let's go. Lin Sun smiled and turned away with Xia Zhi. An hour later, the two returned to the front of Dingdao Mountain. More than a dozen old guys near Dingdao Mountain were very surprised. Why did they come back so soon? Taoism Peer Lin, did you come back victorious? Someone couldn't help asking. Lin Sun smiled and said, I don't think you will see those messengers of destiny in this world in the future. Before his voice died away, he and Xia Zhi had already rushed to Dingdao Mountain out of thin air. In a flash, their figures were covered by the thick power of chaos and disappeared. Hearing Lin Sun's words, those old guys were stunned at first, and then they looked at each other in horror. With a strange wave, Lin Sun appeared in an unknown world. It was as if he had come to the beginning of chaos and the beginning of the primitive world. Between the boundless mountains and rivers, there were plants that he had never seen before. Even the birds and beasts that were distributed between heaven and earth were things that he had never seen or heard of before. Lin Sun looked around and looked at this unknown world for a long time before withdrawing his eyes. He found a blue stone at random and sat cross-legged, got rid of all distracting thoughts, and began to comprehend the power of the way of heaven rule of this world. Only by mastering the mysteries and mysteries of the way of heaven could he endow all things in the world with different attributes and mysteries when he carried out the way of heaven and earth, so that they could resonate with the way of heaven and earth and form a complete and orderly world of Tao. Time flew by, day after day. During this period, a little beast with snow-white fur, which looked like a deer but was not a deer, appeared and curiously looked at Lin Sun, who was sitting cross-legged on the blue stone. It seemed that the little beast found Lin Sun was not in danger, so it stayed in the nearby area. During the day, it played on the mountain, and at night, it slept close to the blue stone where Lin Sun was sitting. Lin Sun naturally noticed the little beast, but he didn't pay attention to it and meditated on the way of heaven. One evening, the snow-white little beast fled in panic from afar. One of its legs was limping, and it was drenched in blood. Behind it, there was an enormous python-like beast that had a pair of green wings chasing after it. The giant beast flapped its wings and set off gusts of wind. It seemed that it was not in a hurry to kill the snow-white beast. It just chased it all the way like a cat playing with a mouse. When it was less than 300 meters away from Lin Sun, the snow-white beast let out a hurried and anxious cry, and it crouched on the ground, as if it had completely given up. At this time, Lin Sun, who had been meditating like a clay statue, suddenly had an indescribable feeling in his heart. He could tell that the cry of the snow-white beast was not asking for help, but reminding and urging him to run away quickly. What moved Lin Sun even more was that the little beast knew that it was injured and could not survive, so it decided to feed itself to the beast to buy time for Lin Sun. How the giant python rushed down from the sky, opened its bloody mouth, and swallowed the snow-white beast. If I let a little fellow like you die, how would I be able to live with my conscience? Lin Sun opened his eyes quietly. At this moment, the body of the fierce beast seemed to be fixed. It let out a horrified roar, and then its huge body fell to the ground with a thud, shivering all over. Although you formed a bad relationship with me, you're still a living being born in this world after all. I'll spare your life. However, from today onwards, your clan will never be able to surpass the descendants of this little fellow's clan. Lin Sun waved his sleeves and didn't care whether the huge beast understood him or not. The huge body of the huge beast was teleported away and disappeared among the mountains and rivers in the far distance. At this time, the snow-white little beast seemed to wake up from a dream. It struggled to get up and looked around. Finally, it fixed its eyes on Lin Sun and let out a joyful cry. It limped over and walked back and forth around the cyan boulder under Lin Sun, looking excited and happy. Since you have a good relationship with me, I can't treat you badly. Lin Sun smiled and raised his hand. The injured leg of the snow-white beast recovered as before. At the same time, Lin Sun pointed his right index finger at the place between the eyebrows of the snow-white beast. A magical power of property was born in the body of the snow-white beast and imprinted in its bone patterns. This was the bestowing of property and mystery, so that it could sense and agree with the rules of nature. From now on, it was no longer an ordinary species and could go on the road of cultivation transformation. At the same time, Lin Sun named this beast Snow Spirit Deer. Snow Spirit Deer blinked its eyes and felt that it seemed to have changed, but it couldn't feel anything. But soon, it didn't care about this and fell asleep comfortably beside the bluestone where Lin Sun sat. From this moment on, Lin Sun's spiritual awareness spread in the rules of nature of this unknown world like a big net. Soon, everything in this unknown world was reflected in Lin Sun's mind. He said softly, "From today on, I, Lin Sun, will determine the rules of this world, endowing it with property and mystery. I hope all living beings in the world can sense the rules of nature and create a cultivation civilization for future generations." This voice was like the decree of a ruler of the Tao of the heavens. Every single word resounded through this unknown world and reverberated through the world. Chapter 3281. When the voice faded away, everything in the world suddenly glowed with different vitality and colors. Every grass, every tree, every bird and beast seemed to have intelligence, showing unprecedented charm and wonderful appearance. Everything that was unknown was being defined. They had their own names and attributes, and they contained completely different profundities. The veins and roots of the flowers and trees all showed traces of the Great Way, and the fur, blood, and bones of the birds and beasts also showed mysterious charm of the Great Way. In the end, even the rocks, gravel, flying mist, waterfall, flame, breeze, and other things also showed mysterious Tao marks. This process lasted for a full 7 days. In the end, Lin Sun was still not satisfied. He gave all the mysteries of the Great Way he had comprehended before, such as the Tao of good and evil, the truth of right and wrong, and so on, to the invisible traces of the world. In this way, all the spirits in the world could be nurtured so that they could comprehend the mystery of it silently. This should be enough. From now on, this world will be called Tao Abyss World. On the bluestone, Lin Sun stood with his hands behind his back. At this moment, he suddenly had a lot of enlightenment. Wasn't the process of determining Tao creating a complete cultivation civilization? All the spirits in the world felt the Tao of heaven and rose in accordance with the Qi of the Great Way. With the passage of time, all kinds of incredible cultivation systems would be evolved, and then a real cultivation civilization would be evolved. Determining Tao is so wonderful. If one day I can create a Tao that has never existed in the world, what incredible phenomenon will it show? Lin Sun couldn't help thinking. After a long time, he collected his thoughts and was about to leave. Suddenly, He noticed that the snow spirit deer beside the bluestone had woken up and was staring at him with a pair of clear eyes. It seemed to be aware that he was about to leave, and there was a trace of reluctance in its eyes. Compared with before, this little guy had a unique and transcendent spirituality, as if it had awakened real wisdom from ignorance. Little guy, if there is a chance in the future, I will go to the ruins of fate to find you, Lin Sun said with a smile. He had already comprehended the origin power of chaos in the Tao-fixing realm. He understood that this unknown world that he had fixed would be like the world of the great path that he had created in the disaster realm. In the future, it would appear in the civilization of the era that was born in the ruins of creation. In other words, when Lin Sun left the ruins of Tao and headed to the ruins of fortune, he would be able to sense the Tao abyss world that he determined. As for whether he could see the snow spirit deer again, that would depend on whether it was still alive. The snow spirit deer seemed to have plucked up its courage and jumped up, rubbing its head against Lin Sun's leg. Then it knelt down on its forelegs and kowtowed to Lin Sun, crying incessantly. Lin Sun understood that the little guy was thanking him for his enlightenment. Go and pursue your own Tao. Lin Sun laughed and waved. His figure disappeared into thin air. Whoosh! At the top of Dingdao Mountain, Lin Sun appeared and saw Xia Ji waiting there. Have you succeeded? Lin Sun asked. Xia Ji nodded and said in a clear voice, We're going to the Tao developing world next. You must be careful. I suspect that those enemies will definitely not miss this opportunity to deal with you. You too. Lin Sun rubbed her little head. Xia Ji raised her little face and pointed to her forehead. Lin Sun was stunned at first, and then he immediately understood. He held up Xia Ji's beautiful little face and kissed her smooth and translucent forehead. Then Lin Sun blinked mischievously and said, Are you satisfied now? Xia Ji said, No, you haven't had a child with me. Lin Sun was speechless. Xia Ji revealed a mischievous and brilliant smile and said, I'm just teasing you. I'll consider whether I want to have a child with you after you marry me. As soon as she finished speaking, she turned around and walked into a gate of heaven and disappeared. Lin Sun was stunned, and a strange emotion surged in his heart. Xia Ji was probably not as ignorant as before. At least, she should have understood those things about having a child that couldn't be said after that. Lin Sun smiled and shook his head before taking a stride forward, and the gate of heaven opened by itself. On this day, Lin Sun comprehended the profundities of the quintessence of chaos and left the Tao-determining world swiftly. The eighth heaven of the spirit's domain was called the Tao-developing world. The cultivators that entered this world seemed as if they'd undergone a path of reincarnation, and all of them were called favored. The Celestial Sect, a second-rate sect of the Tao-developing world that resided on Fengxia Spirit Mountain. Sect Master, if your martial Uncle Qing Feng dares to cause trouble like this again in the future, then there's no need to ask me. Just directly ground him. Within a hall on Fengxia Spirit Mountain, the Supreme Elder of the Celestial Sect, Qing Heng, gnashed his teeth as he spoke with resentment. There was a bed before him, and the Supreme Elder of the Celestial Sect, Qing Feng, was lying on the bed. However, his face was bruised and swollen, and he seemed to be in a miserable state. He'd fallen into a coma. Yes, the Celestial Sect's master, Fu Yunzi, hurriedly agreed, but his expression was slightly strange. 3 days ago, Qing Feng once again went to the Celestial Sect to see the woman that he'd been infatuated with for 900 years. In the end, Qing Feng was blocked by the disciples of the Celestial Sect before he could enter the mountain gate of the Celestial Sect. Qing Feng used his identity as the Supreme Elder of the Celestial Sect and wanted to force his way in. In the end, he was violently beaten by a disciple of the Celestial Sect who was only at the reincarnation developing realm. He was beaten black and blue and directly fell into a coma. In the end, he was still sent back to the Celestial Sect by the Celestial Sect. When this matter came out, the entire Celestial Sect felt humiliated, and the entire sect felt humiliated. But there was no other way. Who asked Qing Feng to be the Supreme Elder? Even the sect master, Fu Yunzi, couldn't arbitrarily punish him. so he could only ask the Supreme Elder, Qing Hung. Sure enough, Qing Hung also felt that his old face had lost all light and was extremely furious. So, there was this scene before his eyes. After thinking about it, Qing Hung warned again, "Remember, use the best spiritual medicine to heal your martial uncle's injuries. Don't let him leave behind any hidden dangers." When he was young, he and Qing Feng entered the celestial sect on the same day of the same month. Although they were brothers, they were no different from real brothers. Although he resented Qing Feng for making a fool of himself, Qing Hung was also distressed to see him seriously injured. "Don't worry, martial uncle. I will take good care of martial uncle Qing Feng," Fu Yunzi hurriedly promised. "When your martial uncle recovers, let him go to the Sutras Depository. Remember, never give him a chance to leave the sect, and go to the celestial sect to see Tian Ruojing." Qing Hung exhorted and turned away. Fu Yunzi's eyes looked back at Qing Feng, who was in a coma on the bed, with a very complicated expression. After a long time, he sighed and turned to leave. Not long after Fu Yunzi left, Qing Feng, who was in a coma on the bed, woke up. The moment he opened his eyes, Qing Feng was no longer Qing Feng, but Lin's son. His identity, memory, and experience were all inherited by Lin's son. "I didn't expect that I would become an old guy who achieved nothing and a well-known laughingstock." Lin Sun's eyes became strange. Qing Feng, one of the 3 supreme elders of the celestial sect, had been cultivating for 1,000 years. His 2 senior brothers, one was Qing Hung, the other was Qing Geng, both had the cultivation of Zhu Xing ancestor realm. These 2 were also the 2 with the highest cultivation in the celestial sect. Qing Feng's martial nephew was Fu Yunzi, the head of the celestial sect, who had the cultivation of the 8th level of the Emperor realm, Path Fusion realm. It could be said that, in terms of identity, Qing Feng could also be called one of the top 3 in the celestial sect. But his cultivation was only at the level of reincarnation developing realm. This was embarrassing. Not to mention that he was far inferior to his martial nephew. Even most of the disciples in the sect were stronger than him. As a result, Qing Feng's status in the celestial sect became very special. On the surface, everyone in the sect was very respectful to him, the supreme elder, but in secret, many people regarded him as the shame of the sect. In addition, Qing Feng was impatient and did things rashly. He didn't have the demeanor of an elder in the sect at all. Instead, he often did some absurd things that did not match his identity. Over the years, he had caused many jokes. Nowadays, when many disciples of the celestial sect went out, they would feel unspeakably ashamed and humiliated when Qing Feng's name was mentioned. For example, 3 days ago, Qing Feng sneaked out of the sect and went to the celestial spirits sect to find Tian Ruojing. Instead, he was beaten into a coma. This incident was regarded as a joke and spread among many sections. This made the whole celestial sect ashamed and resentful. Even Fu Yunzi felt that he couldn't raise his head. At this time, Lin Sun had inherited Qing Feng's memory and understood his experience, but he had a different feeling in his heart. Qing Feng was not a bad person, and he was not an arrogant and domineering person. On the contrary, most of the jokes he caused were related to his cultivation of reincarnation developing realm. When a supreme elder of sect only had such a low cultivation, no matter what he did, he would inevitably cause a lot of criticism, and it was easy to be regarded as a joke. For example, the reason why Qing Feng went to the celestial spirits sect 3 days ago was that he fell in love with a woman named Tian Ruojing in the celestial spirits sect 900 years ago. He was so infatuated with her that he couldn't forget her until now. For Qing Feng, he just wanted to see Tian Ruojing, and he didn't want to cause trouble. But now, Tian Ruojing was already in existence at the level of Zhu Xian Emperor ancestor. She was regarded as the peerless existence who was most likely to embark on the immortal path in the past 1,000 years. Her status in the celestial spirit sect was extremely high. In contrast, although Qing Feng was the supreme elder of the celestial spirit sect, he only had the cultivation of reincarnation developing realm. He and Tian Ruojing were people of two different worlds. The most important thing was that Tian Ruojing didn't have any interest in Qing Feng from beginning to end. Even because of Qing Feng's entanglement over the years, she was extremely repulsed and disgusted. Under such circumstances, how could Qing Feng have a chance to see her? Everyone in the Celestial Spirit sect knew Qing Feng's identity and details, so it was impossible for them to give him any face. When Qing Feng tried to break into the gate of the Celestial Spirit sect, it was naturally a tragedy